Good evening, members, and those of you in the public side and visiting members as well. This is a meeting of the Planning, probably the last in the form of the Planning and Infrastructure Committee. The new constitution will be taking over into a different form from June onwards. Some admin, first of all. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building. The fire exits are at the back and behind me. They're located at the side of the room as well. Follow the signs, go down the stairs, and we all meet in the Memorial Park. As we've signed in, we need to check people out. The meeting is being webcast. Any apologies for absence? Resignations and replacements. Councillor Bierman, perhaps? Councillor Bierman, you're here to replace Councillor Austin, I understand. Cubitt, I beg your pardon.
It's working now, but anyway, that's Councillor Cubitt, just for the record. I know we don't look alike, but I've kindred spirits on this occasion.
Any declaration of interests or whipping decisions? No. Urgent items are none. And I'm going to confirm the meeting of the minutes of the 20th of February and the 5th of March. Now, I will be signing one, Councillor Peach will be signing at the other, as I was not present at one of these. Any observation on the minutes? Nope. We'll sign those, thank you. In fact, I will leave it to the end of the meeting, we'll actually get through that formality. Members and public participation on issues contained with the agenda. We have some speakers this evening. Standing invitation to the relevant portfolio holders. They will not be present this evening because I'll explain to you why in a minute. Referrals from council. The business of the meeting tonight is to accept 2 referrals from council and to really to express the procedure of where they're going to go for debate. There will be no debate on these particular issues tonight. This is a procedural meeting. This is in line with the Constitution. Motions from council come to the committee. The committee decides then how they will be handled at the next future opportunity of the committee. And I have got an outline here of how this is going to be approached. For the first referral on bus services, it was put into the motion that external visitors would be invited to attend the P&I. Those invitations were extended. At the time, it was identified that the appropriate P&I meeting would be in July. Both of the invitations were accepted for that date, the 24th of July. That's where we stand as we sit here. However, there's been an awful lot of developments since the motions were put, and at the moment we don't know which committee this will go to. There's discussion. There are no plans for committee dates yet because of the changes in the Constitution. It is possible that this motion will go to the Scrutiny Committee. There are no dates for the committees yet. That is still under discussion. If an appropriate date could be made earlier than the 24th of July, we don't know and won't know till probably up to selection, then another invitation would go out at that stage to both Hampshire County Council and Stagecoach. So that's where we sit. We are tonight just going through the process of saying which committee. Well, I'm afraid that's uncertain at the moment. We can't say it's going to be P&I. We think it's going to be Scrutiny. That will be examined through the process as we go on. The workload on those committees has not been decided and will not be decided till June. That's the way we're going. The thinking at the moment, and this is in conjunction with officers, and you're going to get a presentation to bring us up to date as far as the technical issues as far as bus services are concerned. It's going to be explained by Peter Smith and Amy Richards in a couple of minutes. But having discussed this with governance, having discussed it with Lisa Kirkman, the idea might be, and this will be up to whatever the future committee decides, to create a memorandum of understanding type of document, because we're dealing with an external commercial organization. They're not within government, they're external. So policy doesn't really apply here. What the essence of the motion was, which I fully agree with, by the way, was a breakdown in communication between the three largest stakeholders in the provision of services. One was Hampshire County Council, the main stakeholders are Hampshire County Council, Stagecoach, and this borough, because we actually commit money to bus services. I was always uncomfortable, this is a personal feeling, but I think I bring along the members as well with this, that there wasn't enough communication before decisions were made that affected this borough. A memorandum of understanding would set in place a communication system that would take effect before any decisions were made. So we have a coordination and a consultation with the three main stakeholders, which includes this council and our committees and the full council, and our residents, more importantly, because they're the users of the system. And we set that in place. Now, this is going to be my suggestion to carry forward to that meeting in discussion with the officers and put that before that committee and to these other external stakeholders. It's an idea. It is not being tabled at this committee tonight. It's just that we have to move forward. And this is a way of, in the process, to take this matter forward. The two stakeholders, by the way, have agreed already to present a briefing at the future committee on this particular topic. They're quite happy to discuss it. It would be a quick briefing on the current consultation that is going on. We're going to hear a bit more about that in a minute. There will be a briefing by Stagecoach as to their perspective. There'll be a briefing by Hampshire County Council as to their perspective, and a briefing by the officers of Basingstoke and Dean. And then we would fall back into at the moment, what we consider the normal routine of questions to the officers, questions to our visiting speakers, and the normal debate. And we carry on with whatever recommendation is produced in the report for that particular meeting. So that's the way I'm going to handle this one. It's process. I'm not doing anything different that had been done before for any referral back from council, because we don't have a report tonight and we don't have the external speakers. Then there would be the way forward, which I think is essential for how to resolve all this. But at least I'm putting into place a suggested process because of the uncertainties of how the committee system is going to be working. And also, the people on this committee could well change dramatically. In a minute, I'll take some questions. As far as the housing development in the borough, I'll address this all in one go and get it out of the way. This will be handled by Andrew Hunter once we've completed the first part. I don't expect this to take long. Councillor Harvey.
I think it's important, Chair, that we do have an opportunity to discuss the direction of travel that you're proposing to set out. So I would expect that we have that discussion. I'd also expect that we have a discussion about the substantive points that members want to bring out, and that's going to be obviously what the public speaking brings out. So I would suggest we hear what the councillors are here to say, and then we have a debate about what you propose as the way forward, because I think there's some issues there that I'd like to tease out.
That's fine, I've got no problem with that. What we're not debating is the motion. I just want to make that crystal clear. That is not on the agenda for tonight. Councillor Mr. James.
I echo what Councillor Harvey said as well, and I'd like to talk about the process, not the motion. But what I want to talk about is, you said that you talked about this going possibly to scrutiny, and that we were looking at a briefing from the two external partners. I have some concerns about that, and maybe we can talk about that after we had, we can talk about the process, because that isn't scrutiny, and it's for those members of that scrutiny committee to determine what that's going to be. And
I'm not here to argue which committee is going to. I'm not here. I find that a wasted conversation, because I just put forward ideas. Nobody in this council knows where this is going at the moment. I tried to make that crystal clear. We can't discuss that it's going to go to scrutiny. It's the thought process is it probably will. Leave it at that.
Well, I thought, maybe I was wrong, but I thought you were saying that there's 2 external members, people will come along and give a presentation. And what I'm saying to you is it will be for that scrutiny committee to determine what that is. And for me, I have some concerns that it is that they will come along and give a briefing and then that's it. It will be determined by the chair of the scrutiny committee.
I did say that the members of the committee would also be able to question those. All it is for them to give an update, probably 2.5 months in the future, about where the consultation that is currently in process has taken everybody. And if we're going to have some communication between 3 stakeholders, Basingstoke and Dean, Hampshire and Stagecoach, we've got to let them communicate with us and us communicate to them. It's got to be right off the bat. Councillor Shaw. Yeah, I don't want to get into a debate here. I'd rather...
we're not talking about the motion, but the motion isn't about what consultation is taking place now. It's saying the consultation that didn't take place. And if we are going to scrutinise, what we would want to scrutinise is why it didn't take place and look at what happened historically. And scrutiny isn't about, it's retrospective, not what is happening now. And so if we are going to scrutinise, we need to scrutinise what happened historically.
You can't rewrite history. What has happened has happened. What we need to do is learn lessons from history and move it on. So if we move it on, we have to understand what the present situation is when this motion is examined. That's the only reason you have updates. Hopefully some of the updates, and I can't predict what they're going to be, I've got no idea what the consultation is going to come up with, is going to answer some of those questions. We can't undo what's happened. History is history. I know some politicians around the world have tried to undo history, but it doesn't work. Councillor Shaw.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I had some thoughts in terms of the process, but just as an observation, it might make sense, I think, at this stage to take the public participation and the member participation, because, as a courtesy to members and the public, and then have the discussion about process, after that. That makes sense to me, and I reserve my right to speak at that stage.
I will actually take the officer's presentation first. Councillor Watts, do you want to pitch in now?
Well, it was appropriate that I put my hand up, but when we're considering this future, there is a forthcoming commissioning outcome group on public transport, and that surely is going to fit somewhere in the alternative process you talked about. So I went to one commissioning outcome group and I decided either there or whether I am. Perhaps the transport one might help me make up my mind which is which. But if we've got a commissioning outcome group about to begin on public transport, then it can't exist in parallel to the processes you're talking about. We've got to have some relationship between them. Other than that, I would like to make my comments at some time.
Sure, you can. I'm going to ask either Peter or Amy who wants to kick off on that particular subject. Thank you, Amy. Officers.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I know the portfolio holder has been keeping members up to date over the last few weeks with developments as they're occurring, but tonight we'd just like to kind of reinforce those messages just so you are completely up to date with current workload in the transport arena. So I shall hand over to Pete.
Can I just ask a question, because it's very crucial to what's just been said? The portfolio holder has been keeping us up to date. I'm not aware of anything, but I might have been left out of the loop. What is it that I might have missed? It's perhaps because I'm not on the committee normally, but it should really perhaps go to all members, but thank you.
Okay. As you probably gather, there's a lot going on in the transport field at the moment, and there's three major initiatives that are in progress at the moment that I'd just like to bring you up to date on. The Hampshire County Council review of local bus and community transport services, evening service pilot, and what we've just mentioned is the COG3 on transport. Hampshire County Council review of local buses and community transport services was announced by them in March of this year, and we, along with all the community groups and individuals, have been invited to respond on a very strict criteria. What they're actually looking at are all the stagecoach services that currently are being tendered by them, not the commercial services, and the community transport services that are being tendered by them. So it's basically everything that they put money into. The process is that this is going to go to the Executive Member for Economy, Transport and Environment in the autumn of this year, and any decision will be made then, but implementation on the outcomes of that is expected very early 2015, so we'll see any changes early on next year. Council involvement in the Hampshire County Council review. We've actually set up a member drop-in session from the 1st of May, and Lisa Kirkland sent an email out yesterday, I believe, inviting all members to attend this session. I'll be there, and Amy will be there, and Lisa will be there to provide guidance, but it's really to investigate how we, the Borough Council, can respond to the consultation, so we desperately need input from members. The evidence will be on a service-by-service basis. We hope to be able to give you a little bit more information on how much it costs to the borough, how much it costs Hampshire County Council, the indicative passenger numbers that use those services, and so on and so forth, so that you'll be able to give some sort of informed comment on each of the services that are under review. This is being held, as I say, on the 1st of May, and any time between 1500, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 o'clock in the evening, we'll be there to host you. Just like to move on now to the evening services pilot. The P&I report in February 2014 confirmed at that time that there was a transport subsidy review of BDP-C funded services only. And part of that review, there was a survey of some 1,600 residents and users of the service. And there was an overwhelming response. In fact, 2/3 of the respondents expressed a desire for a later evening bus service. So we took that on board, and we are working towards having an evening pilot fairly soon, containing three routes. The Cabinet report that was going after P&I wasn't presented because of the Hampshire County Council consultation that I've just been speaking about. The exception was that the evening service pilot would go ahead, and I believe you've all been informed of this. As you can imagine, it's quite a big piece of work that we've been doing, and it does require some quite in-depth involvement from councillors as well as stakeholders and other users of the service. So we've actually set up some focus groups to look at this. These have been going ahead through April and will continue in May. We've had 4 already, and the purpose is basically to make sure that the service that we put forward or provide it responds to the needs of the users and of local employers. The councillor session is one that we haven't run yet, and we're hoping to advise of a suitable date in the very near future when councillors will be involved in the formation of that evening service pilot. The results of that we're going to inform how we run the pilot, routes and timetables and so on and so forth.
Thanks, Pete. Okay, on to the commissioning outcome groups, which were mentioned earlier. As a result of the Hampshire consultation, the transport subsidy review work will now be part of the commissioning outcome group 3, which is the access to public transport commissioning outcome group. The intro session is being held on the 28th of May, and the COG process, as some of you may know, there are 6 sessions that last no more than an hour and a half each, and the sessions look at the 5 areas there. So they'll define the scope of the commissioning outcome group, identify the outcomes that we're seeking to achieve, undertake the gap analysis and idea modelling, and complete an options appraisal, and then undertake service design. And then, depending on the outcomes of that service design, we'll move into the procurement phase. So councillor involvement in the commissioning outcome groups. Nominations for councillor representation on the groups are made through group leaders, and we already have 3 nominations for the public transport COG. So hopefully that brings you up to date on where we are, current working. Questions?
Amy, I've got one question. If you flip back to the previous slide, I believe the COG sessions, how many have you got there? 6 sessions, that they're one a month?
Yeah, that's correct.
And there are 5 on the screen? You've already had one?
Sorry, the first one is the introduction session, and then there's the 5 after, which are the working groups.
I'll take the public speakers now. I've got 2 speakers for this part of the agenda tonight. Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the presentation of the subsidised service, but that is separate. The original idea behind the motion that went to council and approved by full council was the way Stagecoach went about and cut the commercial services. That is the main problem. That's why a third of my ward have no bus service whatsoever, 2 miles from the town centre. And also another fair section only has no Sunday service, 2 miles from the town centre, and only has an hourly bus service. And I've even put on the new bus service they put on, it's a double decker now, there's not even a disabled accessible. So these are the problems we're having with Stagecoach. I don't think a memorandum of understanding is going to help at all, actually. So we must really tackle this when it comes to the committee. I do say to committee members, there are two issues here. There's obviously we've got the cuts to the subsidies side of it, which has got to be looked at, and obviously I should be fighting tooth and nail for number 4 service. But it's the way they're handling the commercial service. You say we can't rewrite history. There's no good. That's no good to my constituency who haven't got a bus service. So I want this committee to have. I asked, the motion, when the motion was passed for council, I asked for it actually for Mr. Dyer from Stagecoach and the cabinet member to come before this committee on the 24th, because this was the last one. But I was promised in return that we would discuss the process today, that there would be a meeting in the beginning of June. And now I'm told we're talking about process again. So it's all about kicking it into the long grass. I want a commitment from this committee, or from the chair for somebody. Why is the portfolio not here? Why is the cabinet member not here? They should be here. This is an issue of fact. It's not just my ward, right across commercial services, Aswan, Oakley, everywhere. So, and obviously Chilham is my good friend here, just reminding me. So I would say I'd like a commitment for a meeting in June as soon as possible to have Mr. Dyer, Managing Director of Stagecoach, who's still not replied to my letter of the 6th of February, and a 1,200 signatures petition. That's how it is. Is he only asking to shareholders, not to my constituents or the people? Is that it? So I would demand this committee says that we have either a special committee, a subcommittee, or a scrutiny committee. Have a committee, get them here and let's talk to them and say they can't act like this again. My constituents, disabled, anybody, and we can never ever talk about a green agenda until we have a proper bus service, because nobody in their right mind, even 2 miles from town centre, is going to get out of their car and use the bus service. Thank you.
Could I ask the officers, the drop-in service on the 1st of May, with the information that Councillor Reagan's just mentioned, I can't go through it all, would that be any contribution to what you're looking for on various routes?
The drop-in session on the 1st of May is to do with the Hampshire County Council transport consultation subsidised services. It's not specific to Basingstoke and Dean, so when they're not looking at commercial routes.
I just wanted to make that clear. Questions to Councillor Reagan? Thank you, Councillor Reagan. It's through the chair, please. Councillor Ms. James.
Councillor Regan, through you, Chair. In relation to, we've been talking tonight about there's going to be a COG, and I know that you're going to be one of the members on the COG. We've talked a lot about process, but I know that the feeling was very strong in the council meeting about this motion and supported. I'd like to understand, because obviously, we're going to talk about this through the COG and how we're going to address some of these issues around subsidy. What is it that we can do, and what is it that needs to be done now in relation to this bus service? Because like you, I have concerns about my own ward and across the town. What are the issues that people are facing, and what do we need to do as a borough?
The main thing, we mustn't get the commercial service mixed up with subsidised service. Those cuts, that process is to discuss, in which obviously COG we'll talk about. Mainly the commercial services, we must get a stagecoach here as soon as possible in front of a committee. I don't care what committee you call it. It's actually say that you're actually not serving the people in this borough. You're not serving the green agenda, you're not serving the disabled agenda, you're not serving working people's agenda. So we must get them and emphasise them. Because I could sit there and tell them, and also a lack of consultation, I could sit there and tell them how to make a bus route run with money. Because there used to be a service that used to go both ways around my estate, and they can still do it again, still make money. They just, well, when we talked to them before Christmas, they didn't want to know about it. They made up their minds, that was it. So they must come in front of the scrutiny committee, will be good, but we can't wait until the 24th of July.
Councillor Reagan, I'm afraid you're going to have to wait at the moment. As I explained earlier on, maybe I didn't explain myself clearly enough. At the moment, we do not have a programme of committees. They do not exist. Until that comes to fruition, because the Constitutional Working Party has been working on this, the programme of committees is being examined by committee services in liaison with the heads of service, and until that is decided, there's no date that can be put up, and we have got the commitment from the other stakeholders in this particular triangle, the 24th of July. We can't give you an answer this evening.
Chair, there was were put up by 5 councillors and me signed that we bring the meeting forward. And now we're being told that because the committee's been abolished, it's been kicked back into long grass back to 24th of July again. So when I go out canvassing, I can say, it's all right, we sort the bus service, so we'll sort the process out to talk about it. I mean, it's nonsense.
It's not nonsense, I'm just telling you what life is. Councillor Harley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Regan, can I just confirm, was it if my memory serves me right, was it in December when you approached the Cabinet member and the Cabinet member was aware of your issues in December relating specifically to the commercial services in South Ham?
Yeah, yes, Councillor Harvey.
I'll take one more question, Councillor Mr. James.
Thank you. Councillor Regan, we've had a commitment tonight from this administration that they're going to have a memorandum of understanding for
I made no commitment. I said, if you want to watch the webcast, it was an example of what could be developed and drawn up. Please don't put words, or take my words and put a commitment on them. It's, if you do a memorandum of an understanding has to, or something like it, call it what you like, it has to be done not under policy because you're dealing with a commercial company external to the local government system. You can't impose policy from a local government onto a commercial organisation. They make their own decisions.
Sorry, so Councillor Regan, the administration aren't going to make a commitment to a memorandum of understanding, so that's something we're not even going to do. We're not sure when we're going to have a meeting. We don't know what we're going to do in relation to future. What are you going to tell the people of South Ham in relation to this administration and their commitment to the transport system and the borough?
I feel that the question is not relevant to what we're trying to deal with the process of this tonight. Very shortly.
I should tell them we're dealing with the process and they'll be very happy.
Thank you, Councillor Regan. Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Chair. This process started when Stagecoach opted to cut the bus services to the people of South Ham, and I'm only talking about South Ham. I do know that the bus service cuts will affect other wards. They have counsel to talk for them. Started in December, as far as the people of South Ham are concerned. We got no joy. We met Stagecoach in December twice. At one of those meetings, the cabinet member was present. Stagecoach didn't move 1 inch for any purpose other than to say we don't report to you, we're not responsible to you, and therefore we have made our decision, full stop. At the ward councillors, we put a motion down for the first council meeting after January, from January onwards, and now we've been told if we're very good, we might get a meeting on the 24th of July, 7 months later. Well, I can tell you, the people of South Ham won't see that as very helpful. They will see it as this administration totally and utterly ignoring their needs and delaying matters deliberately. And that's what I will tell them you're doing. Because we came here tonight because we demanded with the signature of 5 members that the issue be put on the agenda. Now you say the issue is off the agenda. We only talk about process. Well, let me tell you, I'm a member of the Constitutional Working Party. I'm a member of it. This particular meeting of the council is within the calendar year up until May the 22nd. This particular meeting of the council has got the authority to decide what it needs to do and where it needs to do it. I know and you know that what happens after the 22nd of May is not yet finalised. All you have to do is simply say, the relevant committee will pick up the issue when they pick up the rest of the agenda items after the 22nd of May. That doesn't stop you making decisions here tonight, and that doesn't stop you addressing the issue. You're choosing not to address the issue, and you're choosing to do it on the basis of something that will happen sometime in the future. We're not talking about the future, we're talking about this particular calendar year of this council, and you have a duty as representatives of the public, and you as a representative, a representative of the administration, should be saying what can we do and what should we be doing. But apart from that, I've got nothing to say.
Thank you, Councillor Keating. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Sean.
I presume this is the last of meeting.
Well, unless you attend the next development control meeting.
Oh, yes, sir.
They're keeping me going, this indefinitely. And if you look at the agenda, you'll see that they're giving me a pain.
Yeah, so I can't do anything. We must get the process right.
Well, I'm not here about process. I'm trying to help, actually. Putting aside which I share your concerns about how long these things have taken, and I note that this came from a council meeting in February, so we are being slow. But in terms of action, just to help whoever are the chairman and members of whatever committee deals with this after the 22nd of May, and indeed whatever cabinet member deals with it after the 2nd of May, what would you see as the right action or mechanism for the council to adopt to do something about purely commercial services? What would be the process, if you like, that is in the power of the council to actually do something about commercial as opposed to subsidised services?
Thank you. First of all, let me say, any commercial organisations which allows things to drift and no issue is raised with them of substance directly face to face for 7 months, then that commercial organisation will be effectively saying they don't care. It doesn't matter. They're living with it. What the council should be doing is very simple. We should be saying, on behalf of the people of Basingstoke, if you don't want to run a proper commercial bus service through the estates and housing developments of Basingstoke, we will seek to get the County Council to remove your licence and invite other people in to run a bus service, because Hampshire has the licence holder, has the authority to say, Stagecoach, you're not doing the job you're licensed to do. And that's what we should be telling Hampshire. At the moment, we're only talking process. For crying out loud, we should be talking issues.
So just to clarify, this is predominantly a matter of Hampshire County Council, which the borough needs to influence to do. Well, that's what I'm hearing you saying. We can't force, as I understand, we can't force Stagecoach to do anything, and we can't force Hampshire County Council to do anything, but we should be asking them to do something. That's what I'm hearing you say? Yeah, is there something different from that?
I am saying we should be acting as representatives of the people in Basingstoke. It's not a question of doing nothing. It's a question of saying we will represent the people of Basingstoke and make sure that their issues are raised at a relevant level in local government. In this case, it's Hampshire County Council, and we should be saying to Hampshire County Council, it's not good enough, they're not providing a proper service, therefore we need a different provider.
And that's what you'd recommend members should say to Hampshire County Council when they attend the meeting?
Absolutely.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Mr Jones.
Thank you. Councillor Keating, in canvassing up in Brighton Hill recently, I've come across residents that worked in Hatchwell and Sainsbury's, and as part of those recent cuts, which they weren't consulted on, they removed the bus service on a Sunday to Kempshot, Sainsbury's, and those people who used that service, but also who worked at Hatchwell had to give up their jobs. So economically, they've been penalised by this. Question that Horace asked you was about what could we do. We pay a six-figure sum of money to Stagecoach for subsidised services. We've also just awarded them the contract for, it is a question, we've just awarded them the contract for the shuttle bus. Surely, would you want more from a partner of this town? I mean, it's following on from Sean's question, from Horace's question, in that there are people in this borough that are being absolutely impacted on what's happening by Stagecoach.
I am saying we should be acting as representatives of the people in Basingstoke and make sure that their issues are raised at a relevant level in local government. In this case, it's Hampshire County Council, and we should be saying to Hampshire County Council, it's not good enough, they're not providing a proper service, therefore we need a different provider.
And that's what you'd recommend members should say to Hampshire County Council when they attend the meeting?
I presume this is the last of meeting.
Yes.
Can I just say, the people of Southam don't all jump on trains and go to London for, that's what I'm doing, via you. I am answering the question. How I answer the question must be down to me, Chair. The people of Southam don't jump on trains normally and drive to London and do high-powered jobs. A lot of them work in the supermarkets in and around our town. They do. Those supermarkets normally close at 10 p.m. and they often open at 8 a.m. A lot of those people, some of whom live in Southam, some of whom live in Brighton Hill and other places, cannot get to work at the start of the working day, and they can't get to home from work at the end of the working day because there is no reliable bus service at all in the evening. There is a reliable bus service in the morning, but if the bus is late, they often get penalised at work. So the issue of buses for the residential part of this borough is a very significant one. I know of a disabled character who lives in my ward, who has been given the job and allowed to develop himself in Morrison's. Now he can't get to work because the bus service won't do it for him. The bus service has disappeared. Now, if you don't worry about bus services disappearing for the working class population of Southam and others, then I can tell you I will continue to represent them, and I do care about them, and I want something done. And I don't want talks about bloody, excuse my language, I don't want talks about, I just apologise. I don't want talks about process, because process means we have another 3 months, May, June, until the end of July, before we can even discuss this, which is appalling. It's shameful.
Officers, I think you wanted to refer back to something that had been said.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just wanted to clarify the point that you made about the licence. Hampshire County Council are responsible for the tendered services they operate. The commercial services are totally different. They don't actually hold a licence. Any operator can come in and operate a service in Basingstoke should it wish.
Thank you for that information. It's interesting to know these things, but it's interesting how to get here to get it.
Councillor Mr. James.
Just a point of clarification in relation to what the officers just said then, so I understand it. Are you saying, though, so where that service was taken away from Hatchwarren on a Sunday, if somebody else wanted to deliver that service, they could? An operator, or another operator could come into the town, not on the subsidised services, but on the non-subsidised commercial services, and deliver a service. So we could have an alternative bus company in this town.
That's right, actually. Anyone could come in if they wanted to. Another bus company could come in.
Just on the... But that's on the commercial route. Why can't they do it on the bit that we subsidise, or is it on the whole thing? If we chose to subsidise someone else, you said it's just on the non-licensed. Could you just explain to me what you mean by that?
It's a bit of a technicality. You can't run a subsidised service in competition with a commercial service. We're prohibited from doing, well, it is prohibited in law to do that. Transport Act 1985, I think, is the relevant document.
Councillor Leake.
I just wanted to clarify that point, but and in particular to ask if other providers could compete in this market. Why don't they? Is it because Stagecoach are very efficient and give value for money, and you just couldn't compete?
I'll pick that one up. Hampshire County Council do the tendering, and we weren't involved the last time they did the tender, so we couldn't comment on how many tenders were received or what level of interest there was in Basingstoke. I have arranged today, Pete and I will be going to Hampshire in 2 weeks' time to make sure we are very much involved in the retender this time. So we will have a better.
In that case, I've misunderstood it, because I thought Pete Smith was actually saying that anybody can come into the market. You almost implied that Hampshire County Council didn't control the commercial market. No, I think you're saying that Hampshire do control the commercial market. Well, I'd like clarification, because it is quite an important point.
Sorry, to clarify that, Hampshire County Council have control over the subsidised routes. The commercial routes, there is no control.
So you won't be discussing that next week, because it isn't an issue. So somebody could come in, but it would be interesting to know, certainly for the meeting in July, I think, why others don't come in, because it's clearly an issue, and I think we need to know. But I suspect it's because we already get a very good service from Stagecoach. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey, is this a question to Councillor Keating?
It is, Chair, but just on that point with what's been said, the subsidised routes are such that they cover such ground that for any other commercial entity to come into the town is incredibly difficult, because they would then be in a minority position to Stagecoach's monopoly position, with Stagecoach's benefit, because of the way the Act treats the public transport system, that you wind up with both ourselves and the county subsidising Stagecoach to run the other company off the road. And that's how it actually works, and that's the problem. So there is an awful lot this council can do with what we choose, with our money, to do with public transport, which is where this needs to go. My question to Councillor Keating is, in the 7 months that you've raised this issue and been fighting on this issue, has at any time the Cabinet member presented to you an action plan of what they intended to do, or what action they intended to take in response to what you presented in December? Has there been any action that you can point to from the Cabinet member on this?
I don't need any meetings. What I can tell you is what I know. The Cabinet member has written to the council members of Southam, identifying that she's supportive of our work to try to restore the reduced bus service to their proper arrangements. She has indicated that she has written to Hampshire County Council Transport Cabinet member, and she has indicated that she has written to Stagecoach. If what you're asking is in relation to, is there a specific additional action list, not that I'm aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keating. On this particular topic, I think we want to go back to the observations made by members that they want to examine what I had outlined, and I said that is an idea of where we could go on the next meeting. The next meeting has to address the motion. It's as simple as that. But the reason the officers have been here today and given us an update is that things are very fluid. Things are moving external to this particular committee. What this committee's got to do, or the look-alike, whatever it's called, and I cannot be any more precise than that, we'll have to get some up-to-date information, results of the consultation, and what we've heard tonight. And that will be a new starting point, so I can't forecast what that's going to be at all. Now, on that basis, I believe Councillor Harvey wanted to mention something about the process, and it is process, by the way. I'll emphasise that that's part of the constitution of this council and has been, no matter who the administration is. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Seems we're debating this point. The first point I want to raise is that we're talking about this committee and what a future committee will do. Only the committees can advise the Cabinet member. Now, my problem is, one, where's the Cabinet member this evening? And they may have very legitimate reasons for not being here. I appreciate that. But I don't know them, and nor would I know them. But I do know the Cabinet member isn't here to present the information or present the paper. It's the officers that are presenting it. So that's the first point. The Cabinet member has been aware since Christmas. Their presentations. Where's the Cabinet member in relation to this? Now, the Cabinet member's been aware of it since Christmas. What I would have hoped for as process was some executive action based upon the issues being raised, because of the amount of money that this council, let alone Hampshire, and don't forget Hampshire cut theirs a few years ago back to where our amount now is. So in fact, between the borough and the county, we almost subsidise equally, as I understand it.
We do more.
We do more now, do we? That's very interesting. So on that basis, the 32% cut by county is incredibly important because it's going to leave the borough as the main funder of Stagecoach in this town when we're not the Transport Authority. So that raises even more questions. The point being that the cabinet member has yet to present, or the executive, because I'm not just putting this on one cabinet member, that's not fair. The executive have yet to produce an action plan of how they were dealing with this issue. Simply having a debate around this table, Chair, and bringing in the members of Stagecoach and the county to tell them off is one thing. Actually raising the issues of our residents is one thing. But what I want to see is action from us as a major funder, county as a major funder, and Stagecoach as the service provider at this moment in time. While that has happened, while those 7 months have gone by, another process has taken place. That was the awarding of the Shenton shuttle bus contract, that in no way was influenced by the issues around here. So what was the executive doing in that respect? I've got serious questions to be raised there. In terms of going forward, we've got 3 reviews going on here, and I'm worried about that. We've got a Hampshire review, a Borough review, and then Stagecoach, we're doing a review of their own commercial services. And none of them are talking to each other. I really do respect our officers being in the firing line here because they're going to go down to county and you're dealing with this. I appreciate that, I really do. But the point being is you're doing this after the horse has already bolted. Because Stagecoach have come out with their process changes that have really hurt people, and then county are compounding the issue with their service cuts, and so on. So we've got 3 different process reviews going on that I'm worried about even cooperating, working together, and what's going to come out at the end of them. Process. It's going to take us 6 months to get through the cog. I mean, in all honesty, as I said in another committee, you cog if you want to, because I personally want to see some action from an executive doing something. So on that basis, it's going to take us till October to come out with any series of recommendations that are then going to have to go through a committee system and go through a cabinet decision-making process before we get any action for just our bit of the process, let alone anybody else's. We'll be into Christmas next year before we get any results of this. Meanwhile, all the residents in Basingstoke have been suffering. It would have been over 12 months worth of the cuts and the issues, buses that they're facing. And they're pretty significant. And some of the stories that we're picking up, and we're all picking up, it's not just us, colleagues in other wards of other parties, you're all picking up exactly the same information we are of how this is having a serious impact on people's lives in Basingstoke. And it's going to take us another 12 months to get our act together. That's worrying of process. And then there's the issue of the response process-wise of Mr. Dyer to the petitions. Now, I am aware that a junior member or a deputy of Mr. Dyer's has responded to one petition presented by another group of board members. Great, thank you very much, and they've advertised that to their residents. It is disgusting, in my view, that not even an acknowledgement has been given. And they've got every right not to, but it doesn't speak volumes for them that they haven't really. And I find that a problem, that they haven't responded to elected representatives of a ward with a 1,200 name petition. I do find that disgusting, and I am concerned about that. And he needs to look at the processes involved in that respect. So really, where are we going with this? If you go with your process, Chair, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on this, if you go with the process we're talking about, and yourself and the administration of the officers, are we going to wind up on the 1st of May with a bidding war between different members? Well, my service is better than your service, and I want mine protected, not yours. We're going to wind up with competing against each other to represent our interests to the county. Because we're going to wind up saying, aren't we, that we want to subsidise X and not Y. We want to do the number 4 and not the number 7. And if we're in that process, that is not healthy for us to be competing against each other to justify why our wards are better needed than other wards' residents' requirements and needs. And I don't think that's a way forward, I genuinely don't. If we speak with one voice on this, which we did at council, and I think we can do again, because of the concerns that all residents have got, we're in a far stronger position. I don't want us, and with all due respect to the officers, to be put into a competitive environment where they're having to fight each other for each other's bus services. That would be wrong. And I do think we need to rethink how we're going to consult members, gather opinion, and then represent that to the county, because I don't want to be divide and rule. And I know county will use that to justify the £1.5 million or the 32% cut they're proposing. And we've got to think this through in a bit more detail, Chair.
Councillor Harvey, not to use the word all residents, I'm not aware of all residents are concerned about the bus services. I don't have any complaints, but just 1 or 2. In most of my area there are no buses, so it's certain residents who use buses, not...
I will correct my language and say that a significant proportion of our communities do. But I'll tell you something, it's interesting actually, because there's been more residents who don't use buses as well as those who do use buses equally concerned about this, because they see the effect on their families and they see the effect on their households. When we knocked on that door in Brighton Hill and that lady said, I had to give up my job on a Sunday, she had to give up hours in the week, she lost pay because she couldn't get to work because of what Stagecoach did. It's not directly simply because of the bus service, it's because of the impact on her life. When a mum stands at Sainsbury's and can't get on the bus because it's a double-decker and she can't get a pram on the bus with her shopping, that's a massive issue as well. Disabled access on buses. This is so compounded on so many levels and so much needs unpacking here because of what's happened over the last 7 months. And I'm sorry, but it does affect people that don't use bus services as much as those that do.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Comments on sort of process, really. It's a no-brainer, really, that people feel strongly about this bus service issue because, you know, if you've relied on a bus service, if you're disabled, older, you know, younger people travelling to college, it's a pretty fundamental problem if the bus service that you've been relying on, you know, changes direction, ceases, you know, changes its frequency and so on. So, you know, I think there ought to be absolutely common ground about, you know, how passionately people feel about the issue and how strongly they feel about the issue and how much it impacts on their lives. I think really, you know, in terms of thinking about the process, this is an opportunity actually for the council, because I think at the moment the council's behind the curve on the whole thing. You know, it's playing catch up, you know, changes have been made, and, you know, at the moment, you know, the council appears powerless, you know, to make any impact or make any change. And, you know, actually the scrutiny or the overview process, however you precisely describe it, is an opportunity actually to do several things. It's actually, to be blunt, an opportunity for councillors and actually members of the general public to express their anger and express the impact that the change has had on them, and to actually, you know, voice their you know, anger and upset, and that's absolutely valid. And, you know, it's actually, I think, part of the council's role to sort of facilitate that and actually give, you know, ordinary people a chance to, you know, to have a go at people that they feel are, you know, not providing them with an adequate service, and hopefully, you know, to actually put, you know, albeit a commercial company, under a bit of moral pressure to, you know, to respond to the wider public generally. It's also an opportunity actually for there to be a degree of cross-party working, and I think that, you know, group leaders it ought to be within the ability of group leaders and, you know, executive members to sort of A, acknowledge that there's an issue, B, acknowledge that there's an urgency about it, and C, to actually say, well, look, let's not get too bound up in, you know, well, yes, the committees haven't been formed yet, and we haven't done the timetable, but to say, you know, look, what can we do to get a meeting at the earliest possible opportunity with all of the relevant people in the room available with the evidence, and actually try and move the thing forward, you know, sooner rather than later, because otherwise, you know, the council, you know, just becomes a bit of a laughing stock, to be perfectly honest. And also, and this is my sort of third and final point, it's an opportunity to bring in other evidence and other voices. You know, I forget who it was, but there was mention to, you know, the question of, well, what about other operators? Why not other operators? You know, what would encourage or prevent or, you know, facilitate or otherwise other operators coming in? Because I think there's a strong case that a bit more competition would be useful. It would sharpen Stagecoach's Act. It would offer more flexibility, perhaps more choice for travellers. And, let's, as part of the scrutiny or the overview process, ask some other bus operators from other parts of the country, or, ask local authorities elsewhere in the country that have perhaps done innovative work, with bus companies to try and improve provision, to come in and actually inject some external ideas into the debate, that might actually bring some benefits to our residents. So, let's get a good process in place sooner rather than later, and actually make some worthwhile response to people's understandable anger and concerns on this.
I'll just inject something here. Councillor Mrs. James, you might be able to answer this question. Have you, as a group leader, you are the group leader of the Labour group, have you got an invitation to nominate your members to the COG, as mentioned in Councillor Ottleton's email of the 2nd of April?
That was done. I mean, we have a member on the COG, but that's one member on a COG. That's going to meet once a month. So we're looking at it coming back to us in November, and then in November that then will be taken to the cabinet. I mean, we're talking, like as Councillor Harvey said, this process is going to be next year, the following year. But yes, there's one member, which is hardly representative. And as we all said, we have real grave concerns about this process.
Thank you. Councillor Behrman.
Thank you, Chair. Just referring to the report very briefly, I just like to suggest that on page 3, where we've got not bullet points but dash points, whether particularly with respect to our country members who might be a little shocked to hear the borough should be determining how to service its residents. Sorry, are you saying I can't discuss what's in the paper? Whatever, I still suggest we change service to serve, because servicing is something different and it's normally to do with farm animals. But that aside, process. Do you want me to switch?
This doesn't seem to be working too well. No, I made it clear. We do not have the information before this committee tonight to actually discuss the motion. This is why we've got these ideas, some of them very good ideas, I think, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Actually, that motion that you just mentioned was written by members. We can't change the wording in the motion.
No.
It wasn't written by members.
No.
It's reporting to what members said in debate.
Thank you.
The point I made to you earlier before the motion runs into the discussion.
That is commentary from the officers, as far as I can tell. So it isn't talking about the motion. Right, I'll carry on if I may. Well, then I can't understand English anymore. So, well, okay, I can't understand English, let's accept that. That was only an aside anyway. Let's talk about process. The process that I had understood was, in fact, you, Chair, have broadcast it widely, was that we were going to be here tonight, have Mr. Dyer here, ask Mr. Dyer some direct questions. Why that has gone so wrong over this protracted period, I do not understand. In terms of getting somewhere, I think we have the problem that we have a very predatory provider at present, and I can remember that we've had at least 2 attempts from other companies to try and provide alternative services, at least 2, and they've been basically throttled. And so that's why we have a monopoly situation. And I think unless we, as a council, are very proactive, the same, if another provider comes along unsupported by the county or the borough, they will go the same way as others who have bravely tried. So we've got to look, as part of this process, at how we might assist to bring about a little more competition, because that's the issue. Indeed, that's what the Act was enacted theoretically to bring about. It's failed. However lamentably it's failed, that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't try to assist in some way in bringing competition. And there's a local authority not very far from here who runs its own buses and does so successfully, profitably, and without any subsidy from the local authority. Amazing, isn't it? And they're just up the road, just up the A33. I'll leave you to speculate who that might be. But they manage it. So are they so much better than us that they can manage something we can't? So I'd put that as a thought as to how one might go about it and perhaps learn how they do it. But we have a very, as I say, I don't know whether I should stop for a moment. I'm speaking through the chair, so I don't know whether you're with me or not. I am concerned that we should, in going through the process, prepare for looking at alternatives than just talking to an arrogant operator, as Stagecoach has proven itself to be. And as previous speakers have said, if they really cared and felt they were threatened, they would be showing much more interest, irrespective of what we were saying here tonight. They'd be trying to put it right with their customers. Because I cannot believe, from what I know of people who, I've seen copy letters of, sent to Stagecoach by residents in my ward, and as far as I know, they haven't had any responses. And that says to me that really they don't care a toss, and what the public opinion is doing about it isn't moving them. I'd just like to say, in closure, and I hope our deputy council leader is tuned in, and perhaps Council League might even be interested in this as a suggestion. The provision of buses is really good for motorists, because the more people go on buses, the more it frees up the motor traffic and makes it better for motorists as well. So just speaking for a moment for the motoring lobby, I want more buses for them as well.
I was named, and I utterly dispute that. We have bus lanes which hold us up. If you get rid of the buses, the cars will flow much quicker up King's Road or whatever. I would get rid of all buses, frankly, but thank you.
Yeah, we're going to move on. I'm going to come up with, I've got a list of names here. I'll be working my way through them. I'm also, but I will tell you now, I'll be picking up on 1 or 2 points that Councillor Bierman's mentioned, and Councillor Shaw has mentioned as well. We've been making a note of them down here, and this we intend to feed into the report for whatever is going to take over from this committee on this particular subject, because I think they are very good points, especially about the competition side of it, and Councillor Shaw's using that as a vehicle to express the kind of very great concern that I've been hearing tonight. It's not the first time I've heard it, by the way. And hopefully we can get some cross-party working on common ground. That's the whole, and the lack of consultation that's been mentioned, that's the whole point of establishing a formal communications agreement. You can't do it in policy. I've explained why. And it's very difficult for a local authority to, in whatever form, to chew out a commercial company. You can't do it. There's various protocols that tell you that you can't do it. You can express your grave concern and your disappointment and everything else, but we have no control of what a commercial company does. If you have them under contract, you can fire them, I agree, but we don't have that control. Councillor James.
Just picking up on that point you said there, we have no control over a commercial company. I disagree. I think we have significant control over a commercial company that we award such large amounts of money. And if we are awarding large amounts of money, then we have control. And if we feel that in relation to the commercial element of any provider, if we are unhappy with that, then in relation to the bit that we're funding, we have control. Picking up on that point, and the point that I want to raise in relation to the process, just to understand it, the officers said that they were going to be visiting county because of the tendering process for the non-commercial element of the contract. Have we never, what I want to understand, have we never been involved in that? You know, we pay, and we said that it's more than county is paying, significant amounts of money to to Stagecoach, more than county. Why are we not involved in that process? I want to ask more. I want to talk about more, but can I just ask that as a question first of all, because that was something that was raised. I wonder if you can just pick up on that. Is that possible, or do I carry on talking?
I've got a technical malfunction up this end. First of all, I did not say anything about, I take issue with you, again, putting words into my mouth I didn't say. You cannot control a commercial company unless you have some form of engagement with that company. You then turned it around and said, well, we have financial impacts on a company. Yes, in that case, you've got control. But please don't twist my words. Now, the officers, do you have any comment to make about the commercial side? Thank you.
So the tender that Hampshire did previously, I can check, but I understand it was about 5 years ago, and it preceded both Pete and I, so I couldn't comment on how involved we were with Hampshire's tender.
Again, picking up on that point you said, Chair, about engagement. I mean, the engagement we have is the consultation, and they should be consulting with us. And I totally disagree with where you're coming from here. I have real concerns about that. But moving on to the process tonight, what I want to know is, and I pick up on what John said about people need to express to you the anger they feel. I've never seen, in all the years that I've been campaigning politically, so much anger about one single issue. Across all of the wards, there is so much anger about public transport and the lack of a bus service. And so I think it's important that the public can express that to us as a council. I'd know the venue that we're going to have, because obviously here is only going to hold, 30 people. So I would like to propose that we have a venue that is significantly big enough, and I think I'd like to propose that is the Anvil. So that's my first part about the process, because we need everybody to be able to come along to express their view, positively or whatever, but we need a process that we can hear that. And as part of the scrutiny process, I would also like to understand, as part of that, we will obviously have County and Andrew Dyer coming along to give us a briefing, and we may ask, or the chair of the scrutiny process may ask other things of them at that meeting. But I would like to ensure before that meeting, and whatever form that scrutiny is, and whoever's on that committee, that they have a pre-meeting beforehand to determine the shape of the meeting and what they want that to be. But I would want to understand how the commercial element works and what engagement has taken place. That's retrospective in relation to scrutiny, but as part of this going forward, I'd also want to understand the where we give subsidy to these services, how that works as well. So I think there's a lot to the actual piece of scrutiny that we're going to do, and I think it's a very detailed piece of work, and I think the members of that scrutiny, before it actually takes place in, I hope, June, have an opportunity to sit down and actually think about what they want from that. Picking up on the separate, because there's almost two separate meetings taking place here, the motion, but also the presentation we have from the officers on the meeting that we have to come along on the 1st of May. I just want to be clear so everyone understands. I'm being asked to come along on the 1st of May to comment on Norden, my ward, and how I think about my service, or maybe other services across the town, bus services, and what I think is important, what is not important. I think we've got it really wrong as part of this piece of work, and I would like to urge the cabinet member and the administration to think again, because what county are asking us to consider as part of their 1.4 million cuts is options that the county are considering, and this is part of their consultation: reducing or ceasing support for Sunday services, reducing or ceasing support for evening services after 7 p.m, reducing the amount of printed publicity with a greater use of electronic information, reducing the frequency and or days of service, ceasing the 9 a.m. early start for the older person's bus pass, replacing bus services with taxi shares or community transport services. So picking up on what Councillor Harvey said, my concern is if Councillor Keating comes along and says, we want this service in relation to South Ham, and then we have Councillor Leek comes along and fights really hard for one of his services in Sherburn St John, what happens? We're going to have a competing interest in relation to councillors, but that's not what county is saying. It's quite strategic as to what they're considering as options. So I have real concerns that we're going to all turn up on the 1st of May as members and be giving our views in relation to our local areas, or maybe the view that I might have as I've picked up when I'm canvassing in Buckskin or Winkelbury, our views of residents and what they're saying. But that's not what county are asking for. And I think we have to have a view as to which one of those options we consider. And the reality is, I don't support either one of those options, and I think that we need to send a very clear message to county in relation to that cut they're going to make. We don't support those options. They're not. Neither one of those options do we support. It's not, do we want to keep the number 4 bus for South Ham? It's because if you keep the number 4 bus for South Ham, you're going to lose all these other things. And so I think when being misplaced, and I think when we're actually misleading the members of this council, thinking that if they come along to the 1st of May and say we'd like to keep the number 4 bus for South Ham, everything else is going to be okay. And I just have grave concerns, and I don't think that's the way forward on the 1st of May. And I'd like to say, as a part of process, that we look at this again. And I'll come back later on.
Do you realise when the 1st of May is? Next week. I don't think anybody is going to have any time to reconsider anything in that timescale. I'm being very frank here. It's, you know, it's a nice request, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Chair, coming back on that. The consultation for county closes on the 30th of May, so we've got significant time. We've chosen to choose the 1st of May, but my concern is that isn't what county are asking us as part of the options. They're asking us to consider these issues. Now, us coming along and saying, do we support, which bits do we want to close and which bits do we think are relevant, isn't the issue. What county is saying to us is, these are what we're looking at.
Thank you. The format of the kind of open workshop session on the 1st of May will very much be based around those 6 proposals that county have put in their consultation, and we'll be providing as much information as we can with regards to the current routes, passenger numbers, the usage during the different times of the day. So members can have all that information alongside the county options to put forward your comments, views, opinions, and yes, we have got the whole of May then. We have got a month to work up our consultation, and that may well involve further meetings.
But could we not say, as a council, because of the viewing, it was unanimous, and I'm not sure that Councillor Leake voted for it in full council, but other than council, I think it was unanimous in relation to the motion before us tonight, is we don't support any of those because we feel that any of these would be detrimental. And if we start to say, justify keeping one against another, one of those other services will lose out. Surely we need to say, because it was so strongly felt as members across party, that we don't support any of those options before us. And I will not be coming to that meeting on the 1st of May, and I will be responding by saying I don't want you to support any of these as a council. And what I would want our cabinet member to be saying is, I don't support reducing or ceasing the support of services on a Sunday. I don't support reducing evening services after 7. I don't support reducing the amount of printed publicity for electronic information. I do not support reducing the frequency of day services, and I do not support the ceasing of a 9 a.m. early start for older persons bus pass, and I do not support replacing bus services with taxi shares for community transport services. And that's what I would like this council to be saying to county.
Yes. I'm going to bring this back to process, because if we do not agree how this is going to go on, I'm trying to get some agreement on members that we've got to move this forward through the process of committees that this council has embraced. And I've explained to you why. It's not going to be changed in a hurry, certainly not as we enter Purda. We need to find out and give guidance to the officers of how we structure a report that will be presented to this committee. I don't know who promised June. I haven't heard that date mentioned, because it's been agreed. No, you cannot speak, Councillor Reagan. Please. You're not at the table. At the moment, we do not have a date other than the 24th of July. I'll ask you to retract that. It has not been brought forward to this committee or to my notice. No, because we're in discussion with officers about the progress of this paper. I have not been given a date. I can only express what I expressed at the start of this meeting. The 25th of July is a known date with acceptance from the people who are going to participate. We have got nothing else. You can demand as much as you like. I don't have that information.
You should have.
Chairman, would it be sensible if the members of the committee went and left you to argue it out with the members who are not on the committee?
No, that's okay. Thank you, Councillor Leake, for your input. Councillor Gary Watts.
Yeah, quite obvious throughout this whole process this council hasn't been very proactive. It seems to have rolled over what Stagecoach have made these decisions. We've got considerable leverage as a county, as a borough. We subsidise the buses within Basingstoke and Dean by over 600k. I think the county subsidised it by 400,000, if my memory is right, from the last February meeting. So we have considerable leverage, and we should be using that leverage to hold Stagecoach to account. Talking about the process going forward, it's quite incredible. This issue came up in December. It's gone to motion in February, and now we're proposing a meeting in July. That meeting will happen in July, then it'll go back to the full council in October time, and then the cabinet in October and November. So we'll probably get a decision from the cabinet in December time. It's just ridiculous. You wonder why people don't vote in local elections, because this council is ineffective. and we need to streamline the whole process. There's things that we could be doing now, and it's been brought to attention tonight. There was when I was out canvassing in the Burg the other night, there was a couple said, we've had our bus services cut for an hour. We went down to get on the bus, and we couldn't get on the bus because it was a double-decker bus and it had no disabled access. And this is lifelong Conservative voters, this is not Labour voters, and they were appalled. It's something that this council could be doing now. The portfolio holders should be writing to Stagecoach now and saying this is outrageous, you should be sorting this problem out. And it's being brought, I hear Councillor James mentioned an incident happening in Brighton Hill. That's something we could be doing now. We could be proactive as a council, but we're not. We haven't got any portfolio members here. I mean, if I had any hair, you'd put it out. You know, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, we haven't worked in private sector all my life. We're dithering and dallying around. You couldn't make it up. And I just think, you know, blaming we don't know what we're doing. There's things that this council should be doing right now to looking after the residents of this borough. As I said, we've got considerable leverage, and we should be using that leverage much more effective than we are.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little bit concerned about one or two things that I've been hearing. Peter may be able to confirm. I suspect that if a public authority that subsidises a bus operator on some routes seeks to get the operator to run its commercial routes and services in a particular way by what's just been referred to as leverage, extra days, longer hours, etc., that could well be illegal, and bring the council into very great disrespect. On the other hand, if we're doing business with a company, and I'm saying this to try and be helpful, and I'm glad to hear that what we're saying tonight is going to be reported to whoever deals with this. If we're doing business with a company on one matter, subsidising routes, it certainly provides the opportunity to have a strong and positive relationship with that business, so that first they don't spring changes on you without notice. They at least warn you, preferably discuss it with you. Second, they actually want to discuss their plans with you, so as to continue to be in a good, positive, friendly relationship. But it takes two to tango, and we have to start off by trying to be in a good, positive, friendly relationship with them, and some of the things we say about them are not conducive to that. But in practical terms, I'm really picking up something Laura said earlier here, in practical terms, that won't happen, that won't work in terms of discussion with individual councillors, with residents, with community associations. Like any commercial operation, any bus operator, not this particular one, any bus operator is working to tight margins and doesn't have unlimited capacity to discuss everything with everybody. It would have to be a discussion between the council and the operator, the two outfits concerned. Now that creates in itself an interesting dilemma, because as Laura said, for the council to arrive at an agreed position on which services are most critical, etc., even with the ones we subsidise, is damn difficult, because everybody wants to protect their own. So it seems to me there's an inherent difficulty there, and I'll come back to that in a moment, if I may. To get away from process and talk about actions, it seems to me there are four spheres of action. One is our ability or otherwise to influence the county's decision process. I'm very glad to hear that officers are now actively engaging with them at the officer level. That absolutely needs to happen, and it should happen at portfolio holder level as well as it does at leader level. But we don't, there's a sort of problem of scale where it's quite difficult to get attention, I find, of counties' portfolio holders to minor matters at a mere borough level, because their scale of operation is just too big for the portfolio holder in most cases. That's the first thing. The second thing is to go out into the market and tell the market that, hey, we're subsidising 600 k's worth of transport around here. Is anybody interested in running routes? That would be an interesting discussion with competitive operators, because of course the routes are very interlinked with Stagecoach's existing routes, and would present another operator with a bit of a challenge, but it's certainly something one could do. It needs to be actively done. It's not going to happen by somebody noticing that we're doing this. The flag has to be flown, and it may be that we could work with other councillors, as has been suggested. The third thing is influencing Stagecoach's commercial decisions, as I just mentioned, about their commercial routes. You can't coerce them. You certainly can't coerce them. You can't tell them how you want to run their business, because that would just put their backs up. You're not forming a positive relationship with them. But the last thing on that set of things, which influences all the others, is you've got to decide how much money you're going to spend subsidising bus routes. And this is a creeping problem, which was the situation discussed at the meeting previously. The council as a whole has to decide how much it's going to spend subsidising routes. Then the council as a whole has to decide how that money is going to be spent. You have to have a set of policies clearly established that say, this is the limit we're going to spend, because some of what we're hearing says spend as much as you have to. Don't limit what you're spending, because oppose this cut, oppose that cut, oppose every cut means spending as much money as it takes, which it could be a decision the council might arrive at. Some people might not be too happy. But you've got to make a decision as a council what you're going to spend, and the principles that are going to be applied to what to spend it on, and how to make those decisions, as opposed to haggling about this route, that route and the other. If you can do that, you are then empowering officers and portfolio holders, whoever that may be in the future, to actually negotiate positively with people, because they know the basis of their negotiation. But waiting until the cuts are threatened and then haggling about this cut, that cut and the other cut fails, and all you then have to do afterwards is haggle about, well, if we've got a limited amount of money, which one are we going to subsidise and which ones aren't we? And I thought that the last time we met and discussed this, we were talking about principles for applying to the problem, and I think that's what officers are supposedly working on. But unless we as a council can decide that, can actually come to a clear, sustainable decision which sticks for a few years, as opposed to 6 months until the next issue is raised, unless we can come to a conclusion on that, we are not giving anybody, officers or portfolio holders, the basis on which to negotiate anything at all. Any of those things. County, Stagecoach, other commercial operators, or anybody. I can see that there could be some routes, subsidised routes, which could be open to other operators, and indeed there are some county subsidised routes which are other operators, but they are in a very small minority, and they tend to be potty little routes that small firms can deal with. But unless we actually can get our act together as a council, and that applies to all of us, all members, it's no use blaming the administration, so-called. It's no use blaming everybody else. We have to agree amongst ourselves, and I think that is inherently very difficult. And I can say this with some confidence. I have had one resident complain to me about bus services in the last 10 years. She's complained to me 3 times, and it's been one time the bus didn't stop. Second time, the driver was rude to her about something, she said. She's on the bus. She's one of the few residents who gets the bus, because we have almost no bus services in my ward, which is why I don't get much complaint about them, and almost no services of any kind whatsoever. And I'm one of the ones who objects to the idea of spending 20 quid a head subsidising somebody to sit on an empty bus. So I'm not bitching about that or campaigning for more bus services. But I put it to those who really do take this very seriously, and I totally appreciate the issues for the residents who need them in the town. We should have good services in the densely populated parts of the town, going to the places people want to go to. But we've got to decide our position on that as a council and stick to that position and not squabble amongst ourselves. And certainly not simply bitch about the operator, because all that'll do is put his nose out of joint, and he'll do his best not to talk to you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Watts.
Chairman, so much has been said I'd like to respond to, but I won't, all of it. First of all, I want to make it clear that although I might be regarded as a rural councillor, I'm entirely in support of the Basingstoke councillors in what they're saying about the Basingstoke buses. And a town the size and type of Basingstoke ought to have a comprehensive bus service where people know if they get to a bus stop, they will get a bus. So therefore we come to this extraordinary position we're in, that we've abolished any process through which we could deal with this, and we haven't yet got a new one. And as Councillor Shaw said, there's a writ that can be applied to dealing with any of this. Now, mention's been made of PERDA. Well, I've just been advised by directors that I've been in PERDA since the 11th of April, but the Cabinet aren't until next Wednesday. So there is a Cabinet meeting next Tuesday evening. It's loaded with a shed load of decisions to get through before PERDA, but an urgent reference from this committee could ask the Cabinet to arrange a meeting as soon as possible after the 22nd of May, attendance to be recommended by group leaders of the appropriate people, at which we will hope to meet the Managing Director of Stagecoach and the relevant person from the County Council. I'm not sure that we should hold up for a Cabinet member from County Council, because that could be a reason for the meeting not happening. And it's quite possible for us to use that process. It doesn't have to have a label like Ofcom or Scrutiny or anything like that, and it could be done. And I really do propose that this committee, ask the Cabinet to do that. Well, I should be at the Cabinet, I have to, because they're sneaking through a decision I don't like. So, incidentally, the first time I visited the Cabinet, it was to support Councillor Mitchell as portfolio holder in him taking over some of the county's bus services, and Councillor Lee almost fell off his chair when he discovered I'd turn up to support a Cabinet member the first time I arrived. We have a good record, and the Deputy Mayor said we should be proud of it, and we're not getting the service we deserve. I am going to bitch about Stagecoach, and that's because we can't even get them to do what we want on the subsidised routes. And dealing through the County Council is extremely difficult. The most recent thing for 76 and 86 routes is they no longer stop at the station on the way out of town, so people arriving at the station have to go into the bus station to get out again, and that affects people who might get off in Worthing Road, Western Road, and Chiltern Way, as well as all the way to Hurstbourne Priors, and it's unacceptable that they don't collaborate in that way. I believe that they should listen to the elected representatives for their commercial services as well, and above all, I mean, the whole lot should be integrated, so that there's a similar performance on the bus, whether it's subsidised or not. So I entirely support the Basingstoke members on that. Now, as far as the routes I'm interested in, I won't be coming on the 1st of May because the County Council stopped subsidising anything for Whitchurch a long time ago. And such routes as are subsidised for us are subsidised by this council. But, as I said, they go through an important part of Basingstoke and to various other places on the way there. The strange thing is, the county allows the town to wag the dog, because for years, it's improved now, for years if we wanted to talk about the 76 or 86 routes to the Passenger Transport Forum, we had to go to Romsey. Because the buses come from a stagecoach garage in Test Valley, the County Council discussed them at their forum in Test Valley. I mean, that is absolutely absurd. It's madness, and also, of course, how can other operators think there's a fair process when there's a competition? I'd be a bit wary of what Councillor Beamer said. I have a lot of knowledge of Reading Transport in the past. I, in 1968, was co-founder of a Bus Users Association, and Reading Transport were the best bus company I've ever had anything to do with when they were municipal. But the 85 Act actually demunicipalised as well as denationalising buses, so it is a commercial company there. But we did manage in our small area Woodley and Early in Berkshire to get rid of Alder Valley and get Reading Transport in. And so it is possible. The other co-founder of the bus users being elected to the county council might have had something to do with it. It is possible to shift. I think the 85 Act was good in denationalising and very bad in deregulating. To do both at the same time was completely insane. And we've seen the result is that all small operators have gone out of business, and we've got these 4 or 5 groups. Which brings me to the process of the COG. The COG I went to for arts and culture was dominated almost entirely by the providers and prospective providers. Now, the transport COG, are we going to get a Riva and First Group, or Reading Transport even, or are we going to find the only provider there is Stagecoach? We need to be absolutely clear that we can make our own processes for talking about, say that we've invented a new rule at the last borough council meeting that says we can't have a committee meeting until middle of July is stupid. So let's ask the cabinet to get on with it and arrange that meeting. Let's all support the Basingstoke councillors for what they need, and then let's all support each other for our own communities.
I'm going to go back to the 25th of July. The reason for the 25th of July was Stagecoach, not anybody else. It was the first available. You can't tell the CEO of a commercial company to attend a meeting because, as Councillor Mitchell pointed out, you're not on their side. Now, I'm not in this for discussion. I'm just giving you some facts.
I've been misled, but I will be making a complaint.
The hold-up wasn't county because it was requested the portfolio holder attend. He couldn't, so the head of service is coming instead. So we had those 2 agreements some little time ago now, and if it can be...
You're wrong.
Would you like to withdraw that, please?
No.
I signed the letters.
You're wrong, because I...
Right. Councillor...
And they said I could...
Keith Watts. We finished. Paul Harvey.
First thing I want to say is
I was just going to read what the head of governance has sent out in terms of picking up Councillor Regan's points. I wish to give members who have made the request for a special meeting an assurance that the issue will be taken over into the new system and be placed on the work programme for the Scrutiny Committee at an early meeting of the committee organised to deal with outstanding issues. Clearly, it's normal process that we would potentially not have arranged these meetings until the latter part of after selection, and that July would be the earliest. Having discussed the issue with the Chief Executive, we believe that a one-off, if all group leaders could, on behalf of their groups, agree for the inclusion of the issue on a newly formed Scrutiny Committee programme, at this time I could proceed to organise the logistics of an early meeting of the Scrutiny Committee to address this issue. So I think there hasn't been a date set, but the head of governance, with the agreement of the group leaders, would be able to move that forward.
The one issue we have over the head of governance, that was the head of governance, was it? Is that we could not guarantee, or we can't guarantee the presence of Stagecoach or the portfolio holder. Without them, I'm not quite sure how we're going to move forward. And that was the whole point of tonight's discussion, was making sure that we got all the stakeholders, for want of a better expression, in the same room so we could form a way forward. We want to progress on this. It's pointless sitting around having another discussion.
I'm still, I've got commitment to have a meeting picking machine as I was promised.
You've just heard Mr. Hunter repeat what today's email stated. That's the answer.
There's still no date.
There's still no date. We just...
It's about the 25th of July, so that seems to be...
The 25th... Councillor Harvey.
First thing to say is that I agree with Keith in terms of direction of travel on this and what others have said, all right? And Colin is right, Councillor Regan is right on this. It is not a problem, surely, considering we have actually got most of us around this table, appreciating others' views that have been expressed, most of us around this table are agreeing that we want to do something about this. So it is within the gift of Cabinet, it is within the gift of this council to get its act together, to organise a meeting after the election at the earliest opportunity, get a date in the diary, it's not beyond the wit of man to achieve that or woman to achieve that. And in that context, and I appreciate what you're saying, all right, Dyer and the county cabinet and the county head may not turn up to that meeting. They may have only desire to turn up to the meeting in July. But if we organise it in the context of what we've said about residents and what we've said about our actions, that is surely a step forward we can take and should take. So from our point of view, from what I'm saying, from what I'm seeing around the table, at least is commitment to having or recommending to the person who can make the decision that there is a June meeting, and there is a meeting based upon what we've said around this table, the public engagement and what we're doing. If Dyer doesn't want to pitch up, that's his choice. But he'll know about it, and if he's got any sense about him, he'll make himself available to come to that meeting to listen to residents and listen to councillors. If he's got any sense about it. If he chooses not to, and chooses to attend on the 25th of July, that's his choice. But the invitation can be sent out. It's up to him whether he accepts it or not. We can't force him. Of course you can't force him. But the invitation could be sent out. And the same to county. County want to take part and engage with us. I'm sure they can find an opportunity to get somebody to that meeting with relevant authority to take part if they want to. But it shouldn't stop us going ahead in June making that happen. The second point is that there's two tracks to this. I think we do need the cabinet member, and I would ask the cabinet member, and I'd like to recommend that the cabinet member is invited to do so, objects to the county council's proposed cuts. Flat. We as an authority object to the county council's cuts as proposed, and what they're suggesting they wish to do. Rather than take a smorgasbord of views from all different members and have us competing against each other over what is and isn't, surely we can come to a collective view, like we did in full council on this issue, that we do not agree with the cuts being proposed. Flat. And get the cabinet member to get on and do it. In terms of arranging that we go forward for scrutiny, then it does need to be about competition, and scrutiny does need to do a piece of work. That's a separate bit. One from hearing what the public have got to say, and hearing what councillors have got to say about the issues they're facing. So there's the hearing bit, the listening bit, and then there's the action bit. And we don't have to wait for a cog, for goodness sake, a cog to take to Christmas to get some action, if an executive is willing to do it, working with the members. So there's the several action points there I'm sure we can pick up on. And just to say to others, I mean, you know, canvassing in Bishop's Green, I'm very conscious that residents in Bishop's Green are very, very concerned about the buses issue, because that was raised directly to us on the basis of saying they are concerned in your ward. It's not just the individual. That was picked up off the street, talking to residents. So it is the rural communities as much as others, and I would encourage other members to find that view out, because we had it very clearly expressed to us. But taking it forward, I think you've got agreement from all parties, I think, from what's been said this evening. I haven't had any dissent. Have we? Any dissent from that sort of direction of travel? I'd love to know. I think we've got some cooperation going on here, actually.
Councillor Bierman, and I'll take that the last. I want to do a summing up in a minute.
I'm afraid, Councillor, there's a slight bit of dissent. I'd just like to start with the letter from the email from the head of governance, which I don't believe I was sent to. No, I wasn't, which I believe I should have been, perhaps. Oh, right. I thought it was one that went to group leaders that was being, it sounded like it. Oh, right, okay, well then it's all a mystery, but...
I received that same letter, email, and I actually responded to that email today, so I also was copied in. Martin's right, he wasn't copied in. The leader of the council was copied in, and so was Gavin James. But I did copy Martin in, and I also did copy the leader of the Conservative group member in as well, because they weren't copied in.
I'm just sort of saying, I think one needs to be kept in the loop, otherwise one doesn't, as I said earlier, know what's going on. The other thing is, I'd like to, in effect, second Councillor Keith Watt's motion, if indeed it was, that we ask Cabinet to take the thing forward. I'm a bit reluctant to have another meeting without Dyer here, because frankly it will be a repeat of tonight, and I want to not quite point a finger at anybody. I would just like to respectfully ask some serious questions and get a public response that's then on record, and then I think we can move forward, because otherwise we're arguing amongst each other and speculating and not making progress. So I really think the next biggie meeting on this topic should be with Dyer or not at all. Well, I say not at all. It should otherwise be a completely different one, saying, as Councillor Mitchell has said, let's bring everybody else in if Dyer doesn't want to come, and let them put their pitch in. So I'm seconding, in fact, if Councillor Watts doesn't mind, his suggestion that we, from this meeting tonight, request the Cabinet to arrange as soon as physically possible a meeting with the Chief Executive of Stagecoach as soon as the election is over. That's what you were saying, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been listening to everything, and excuse me for consulting with Mr. Hunter, but we've been looking at the Constitution. As we have the Constitution, the papers for Cabinet have already been produced. It's meeting next week. What we can do is, and what I'm proposing, if you like, I've collected all these various ideas and proposals, is that we can address the portfolio holder before the Cabinet meeting next week. Do you want me to go down through these?
Should I go through these?
Mr. Hunter will just go through these points that we think we've picked up everything about early meeting in June, the public the expression of public anger. Surely that, I think I've heard enough of that tonight from the elected members from the wards. That's our job. Pardon?
You did contribute.
I did, and I was patient enough to listen. But Mr. Hunter will just enumerate these points that I think should go to the portfolio holder as a matter of urgency before the Cabinet meeting next week.
Okay, I'm going to try and pick up that. So there's obviously the recommendation that the Cabinet, the portfolio holder, considers the earliest convenience a meeting in June to deal with this particular issue. I was trying to put together what the scrutiny would actually look like and what it would do, which I think is part of the reason for the referral. So the first part would be the opportunity to express concern, question the provider and the county, and that we would need to consider the appropriate venue for that to happen in. I had a comment about working with group leaders to bring forward this issue at the earliest opportunity, but that's superseded by the recommendation to Cabinet. The officers bring back evidence of other operators, what other local authorities do, what other external ideas there might be in terms of subsidy, and working with other partners as a part of that scrutiny. That prior to the scrutiny happening, that there is an early meeting of perhaps the new chair and some of the members, just to determine the shape of the scrutiny moving forward. Councillor Mitchell just picked up his point about aiming to be more open and have a good communicative dialogue with the council and the operator, and form a good relationship moving forward. I think those were the key points which would be within the frame of the scrutiny.
Sorry, Councillor Harvey.
And the point about the Cabinet member being asked to object on behalf of the council to county's cuts.
Is that the Is that a view of all members of this committee? Well, no, it's not a votable thing. We either do or we don't. It's the views of the committee.
Chair, I would like to support that, because there's 6 options that county are asking us to consider as part of their cuts, so £1.4 million cuts. And I can't support any of those options. And it's not about a particular service, because that's not what they're asking us. So I would like to ask the Cabinet member to object under each section of those cuts. Yes, I would like to ask them to do that.
Yes, Councillor.
Could I disassociate myself from that recommendation? I'm fully supportive of the cuts the county are proposing to take. We really cannot go on subsidising bus services. This borough spends £600,000 a year. And as we know from the meeting on the 20th of February, no other district in Hampshire spends more than £50,000. We saw that on a chart. And the county have got to make cuts somewhere. I fully support those cuts, and if it's in buses, so be it.
The only thing we can say to the portfolio holder, there are mixed views from this committee about whether they it's a mixed view from this committee. It is not a unanimous view of this committee that the portfolio holder should object. We do all individually have an opportunity to go along on the 1st of May, and you can express your view by objecting to all of them, if that's your view. But at the moment, I cannot recommend that up to the portfolio holder. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. It was on another point, because I think the way that Mr. Hunter sort of summarised things, it was a reference to other operators, because he said, I think the way he described it was, you know, that we wanted to ask the officers to sort of look at other operators and sort of report back, if you like. You know, I actually wanted a more direct process, because, you know, putting it bluntly, if it transpires that Stagecoach aren't able or aren't willing to attend until July, I think it would be quite helpful in that context if they knew that there had been an earlier meeting where perhaps, you know, managers from Arriva or First Western or Reading buses had arrived at our door and had given their views, and we had asked them, you know, what can we do to improve bus services in our area? What can we do to encourage competition? What can we do to encourage operators like yourself to operate in our borough when you've not done so previously? And I think it would be rather interesting, wouldn't it, to have the actual managers from those actual alternative operators to take a bit of initiative, perhaps benefit themselves commercially down the line, and actually, you know, perhaps be able to respond positively to that kind of question, and actually to put a bit of pressure on Stagecoach and make them think, well, hold on, guys, we've got Arriva, First Great Western, they're elbowing in a bit, you know, they're saying we can do X, Y, and Z, and it might stiffen their responsiveness to their customers.
We will shape that and put it into the list. You did mention it before. Councillor Gardner.
Just going back over a couple of points. Laura gave the long list of things which are part of the county consultation. I must admit, I looked at that list and my first response was none of the above, go away and think again. However, I shall be attending the meeting on the 1st of May, and I will be looking at what is proposed, and I will try and prioritise, if a cut is necessary, which ones I would prefer. I prefer none of them, but I won't have any influence whatsoever. Saying I don't want to play isn't going to get us anywhere. I think you're absolutely right. Let's talk to the portfolio holder. Let's try and put a little bit more pressure on Stagecoach and on the county. I think with the growth of the town, we are going to see an increasing demand for public transport. Otherwise, the roads will be totally gridlocked. If that happens, I don't care what John says, we ain't going to get anywhere in a car. I tried getting down the A340 tonight, and there were queues in both directions without a bus lane. I think we have got to move this along. We can't leave it till Christmas. Let's see what the portfolio holder can do, and let's try and get a meeting as soon as we can after May.
Which is what we've been trying to do all along. Councillor Mitchell.
I'm going to come back, if I may, to what I understand Keith to be recommending, and Andrew a couple of times used the word scrutiny. Scrutiny or some other committee of the council, it may be a very good vehicle for doing what Martin wants to do, which is to not point the finger at anybody, but ask them searching questions. Committees can be quite good at asking searching questions if the people will sit down to listen and answer them, as opposed to storm me out in a huff, which people are entitled to do, of course. However, it's not an environment for positive negotiation and achieving action, and I don't think any committee is, because committees can't negotiate. By definition, committees can't negotiate. And therefore, I think it would be healthier to separate out the scrutiny aspect of getting into the process between us, the county, the nature of the process and the nature of the relationship between us, the county, and bus operators, and why they don't consult with us, or how they consult with us, and all those sorts of things, and how concerned we are about the nature of their cuts and the arbitrary nature, apparently, of some of the reductions in services, which is a natural activity for scrutiny or for any other committee, versus positive action and negotiation. And what I understood Keith to say is the message to the Cabinet, not the portfolio holder, but the Cabinet as a whole, or the leader, if you prefer, is to say we ought to get on the positive foot on this. We ought to go onto a positive basis on this, that they're working with the group leaders after the election, whoever's the relevant people after the election, that can't be certain, can it, should set up an early meeting, an internal meeting, I would suggest in the first place, to actually agree the process of negotiation, the basis of negotiation, which could, of course, then go through committee and council eventually, but let's get on with it. And then to start the process of negotiation. Now, that would require goodwill on all parties, but if you have the group leaders involved, you should assume that's what you're going to get. If the group leaders can't agree amongst themselves how to get on with this process, then no committee will. Very simple. And I do think, simply getting people in front of a scrutiny or other committee to have a go at them and ask them searching questions is not going to take the process forward. It's going to clear the air or muddy the waters. Don't care which, but it's actually not going to achieve any action. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I think we should separate those two streams.
The proposal was a meeting to meet the original objectives of the motion that we're not debating tonight. Could take place as soon as possible under the authority of the Cabinet, and the group leaders could decide who are the appropriate people to attend. We don't have to say if it's an Ofcom or a scrutiny or anything else. It's a meeting that this council wants to have with these relevant people. And probably the most sensible way to arrange a date is to ask Mr. Dyer when he's available and where he's available, and so we'll come to him if necessary. But it's quite possible for that decision to be made. It's quite possible for the members to be nominated provisionally, and if I'm one of them and I lose my seat, then someone could substitute for me. So a meeting of appropriate people can talk to these other people. And to say that we can't do that because of our own complete cock-up over a process is not acceptable.
Finally, Councillor Harvey.
Just to agree, but say it is all right to say the 25th of July isn't soon enough. It is all right to say that to Mr. Dyer, and that's why I agree with what Keith is saying and appreciating Horace's points. I mean, there is cross-party support for this. We're getting, from what's been said this evening, it's something that's pretty positive, and let's use it. So, can we have some leadership from Cabinet, please? Agree with that. And secondly, can we not lose the point about public views on this? I thought John was right with what he said. The point about residents informing us of their experiences. We're their representatives. We're here on this council for a reason. And I think hearing what they've got to say in the right forum, we need to think that through, but it can be achieved, and it can be achieved within reason, not leaving it, kicking it into the long grass, so that they inform with their experiences. We better understand what they're going through, because some of those stories are quite serious and they're very heart-wrenching in some respects when you hear what people have actually gone through personally, particularly in terms of losing income and the economic impact, and then from a business point of view, because it would be interesting to hear from the likes of Sainsbury's of how that's hit them, and it has affected them, if they were willing to share that with us. And it is also the smaller businesses, let's not forget about, and we talk about the Sainsbury's of this world, but it's also the smaller businesses and their margins have been hit by this. So I want to capture what John put out there as the idea from a public point of view, and not lose that in what we're going forward with. I want the residents to have their say.
Yeah, I'd like to wrap this up. I'd like to consult Mr. Hunter now to get this straight and let you guys know what's going on.
I should declare that I am a shareholder in Sainsbury's. It's been mentioned 3 or 4 times.
I think we sort of outlined it, how this wants to go, but we'll take Councillor Mitchell's point that to actually move this forward, we need that separate meeting. Initially, this is where the... Well, okay, Councillor Watson's point, that the process of scrutiny and the other process of engagement with the county and with Stagecoach probably could be done separately, but at least we can get something going, and that and brought forward as quickly as possible. That's what we're pushing up as an output, if you like, of this discussion this evening to the portfolio holder. It's got to be marked urgent right across the top. Is that the consensus of the committee? Thank you very much. Right. Moving on to the second motion.
I'm supposed to say that.
Right.
Become more prickly. I'll second it.
Yes, I know. Right. It's Future Housing Development in the Borough is the title of the motion, but it's really to do with some open spaces. But we do have some public speaking on this one. And if Nigel Pearce could come up to the table, please. No, take a seat, Nigel, and I'm going to get the officer to present this one.
I was simply just going to say I've spoken to the officers who would be undertaking this work. They've talked to Councillor Tilbury, who brought forward the motion. The intention is that they're putting forward work on all of those aspects already covered in the motion, so A, B, C and D, and we'll be bringing back a report following the election under the new arrangements, and that will cover all of those points, looking at case studies, etc. And they hope to be able to do that as soon as possible.
Mr. Pearce, you have 2 minutes.
I'm not here to speak about the Overton situation. I'm here to talk to you about Highfields, which is might be known as Upper Buckskin or Lower Kempshire. I'm not really sure just yet. Lower Kempshire, thank you. And we've surveyed the people that live on Highfields. There's some nearly 200 houses on that development. And what has happened with the developers not being prepared to pay the money across to the local authority to take up the landscaping is that random charges have been levied on all of the residents. The first year they ranged from £150 to £234. In the second year, 2012-13, it ranged from 190 to 398, and the most recent ranges from 270 to £441. Now that last increase is some 60%, and it's unacceptable. The residents were aware that they had to pay some service charge because it was incorporated in the deeds for most of the people, but the Per Simons group of houses that were built there did not have that incorporated, so those people don't pay it. So there's not even equality across all of the houses. But the point is that what we're saying and what we're seeking from this council is a different way of managing this, because every developer will think, I don't have to pay £105,000 so that the local authority picks up the cost of landscaping. They're all going to do it, and then you're not going to encourage people to come to this town, and we know that we want people to come to this town. A lot of the people who live on Highfields have come to this town because of what it offers. And these random charges, which
is what the only way I can describe them, are going to prevent that. One final thing, because I realise I've only got 3 seconds, I have prepared here a short paper which gives you some of the responses from the residents to our survey. Thank you. Must I? Okay.
Councillor James, a question to the speaker?
I've got a couple of questions, but my first question is, if, because it's a significant amount of money, if a resident or an owner can't afford to pay it, sort of their circumstances change. At the moment, in relation to council tax, there are benefits for people who are in a position that can't afford to pay it. What happens to people in that position, if they're in a position where they can't afford to pay that money?
Well, I don't know precisely, but I do know one resident who rebelled by not wishing to pay and ended up incurring a £60 late payment charge. I mean, effectively, they'll just get taken to court.
Just so I understand it, in relation to these pieces of land that you're talking about, are they closed off so that I can't walk on, they're paying a fee for this piece of land to be managed. Is it open to other people to use, or is it entirely for those people to use? Is it a garden for their sole use?
It might look that way, but anybody can walk onto the estate and go into those play areas or landscaped areas. I mean, the whole plan there is appalling because there are no footpaths, because the road is the same as the footpath, and because of the number of cars that people have, mothers with pushchairs can't actually get out because the cars are all parked around their front doors almost. So they have to drag their pushchair across a number of gardens before they can find a gap to get out onto the... It's very, very badly drawn up.
Councillor Behrman, then Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wish to ask, I've not got to the bottom of this sheet yet, but the very first one left me a little struggling because it says park grass cut only half the park dug up. And could you just clarify what that's saying? What's been dug up and so on?
Without referring back to the resident, which I could do, I have no idea.
Oh. Well, yeah, I sort of naively thought that one might interrogate a quote that's given and say, right, I'll try and do something about it if I understand what your problem is. But, okay, thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, I was a bit surprised to hear about this issue. Where any estate where I've been involved as an owner, where there's been a management company charging an annual rate to the residents, the management company has had to provide an annual report and accounts that demonstrate how it's spending this amount of money. And in one case, where we were collectively very unhappy with what we were getting for our money, we succeeded. I can't remember exactly how, because I wasn't on the committee that did this. I was just a happy supporter. We took over the management committee and did it ourselves. Can you just give me the background to how this management committee, I mean, presumably it must account for this phenomenal increase that it's charging in some way?
There was a public meeting held by the main developer, which is Barrett's, and their property management company, which are OM, at which OM tried to defend that they'd tendered for work and that was the best tender they could get. And they have since, or a number of the companies over the years have since produced some accounts. But that merely says how the money was spent. It doesn't actually evidence that the work was done, which it clearly hasn't been doing. And we've got a number of residents who are looking out to let us know, and the only thing we've seen so far this year is a bit of skimming. certainly the idea that the residents would take it over would find favour with them. That would find favour with them entirely. But you know, we can't advise them not to pay it. We'd have to negotiate with. I think the point is that it's a bigger issue than just Highfields. It's going to happen everywhere, and it's something that we really got to take seriously, because it's double taxation. You know, these people are quite fairly saying, I pay my council tax, but I've got to pay an extra £400 to have the grass cut badly.
Yep. Just to tease it, is there a residents' committee?
Not yet, but there will be, because we're sorting them out.
I appreciate that the council thing is a generalised issue, which we will get back to. I just wanted to tease out the particular situation so as to better understand the generality of it. I agree in principle that leaving the residents of this very messy situation is not clever, and ought not to be the way things happen. But how you fix that is something we'll have to put a bit more thought into. Do you have your own proposition of how the council should fix this problem? Not for Highfields, we'll come back to that perhaps, but I think it's down to you to fix it for Highfields with councillors' help, hopefully. But in the generality, what action should the council take to stop it from happening in the future?
Well, I'm assuming, and I don't know this, but I would hope that some special clause could be put into any planning application that was agreed for any new development that says that it's mandatory for the council to pick up the landscaping charges after the estate has been built, and not be left to the developer to run wild. Now, if that's not possible, then we need to find another way, because it's, you know, we're thinking about building thousands of houses in this area, and people will want to come and live here, but they won't want to come and live here and be taxed twice.
Councillor Leake. Did the residents enter into this agreement voluntarily, or were they forced to do so? And have you ever considered the position of rural residents who still suffer double taxation, and why should urban residents be any different from rural ones?
I think comparing rural to the town is really difficult. We've got a fairly unique situation in Basingstoke, with nearly half the residents living in the town and the other half living in a plethora of villages around the outside, and the issues are different. They do know, because their solicitors pointed out to them, it's in their deeds, except for the Persimmon houses, as I mentioned earlier, because they forgot to put it in there, so they're not paying. They do know, but they don't know what that means. They do need a residents' association. We're going to encourage them to form one in the next couple of weeks, with a hope to go back to OM and to Barrett's and say, we'll take it over ourselves.
Is it not a case of caveat emptor?
I think that's ridiculous.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pearce. Thank you. Councillor Tony Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go over all the figures, I think they've been dealt with, but just to clarify a few things, the area we're talking about is an open area, open to everybody, with a play area in it. So it's not a fenced off area, it's not an enclosure. The public meeting we went to at the time with Barrett's basically was cooling down this council in some respects, because they were saying that the council at the time didn't want to take over that land. I've obviously made some inquiries into that, which isn't true. I spoke to the Chief Executive. But when we talk about double taxation, if I recall 10 years ago, maybe, John, when you were on about the parishes where it was cutting grass, I understand now the council cuts the parish's grass. Is that correct?
Some councils employ the the borough to cut the grass, but as I said at council, the grant has been fixed. It has not been increased, but this council is now increasing the charge every year, and that is unfair, and it's double taxation.
Actually, John, I would agree with you on that. Because at the end of the day, my residents are suffering the same. So it's something we should be looking at as a whole in this borough. You know, if that's where we're going with it. But the other issue, excuse me, thank you. The other issue is we had a planning application in Worthing not so long ago, and I know a few of us around this table were at that application. I actually spoke to the developer there. He was going to go down the same track. Obviously, it was turned down, but it wasn't turned down on the terms that he was going down the same track with that. It's something that's, you know, we as a borough council ought to look at, because at the end of the day, we're going to end up with some mighty big bills or some disgruntled people in 10 years' time who can't afford to pay or won't pay. And so therefore we ought to start looking at it now. And that's all I would say.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Last but not least, Councillor Tilbury.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, as a proposer of the motion, I was sort of supposed to explain this, but I think most people have quite a good grasp. But that's, I think part of the problem, Tony said it's not the council, but part of it is the council, because what happened with Foxton is that some of the areas were seen to be not of any great value or any value to the public, so the council said, we don't really want them, so the developer can keep them and they can maintain them in perpetuity. So I've actually got the plan here of the site there, which I've coloured in, so it's a bit easier to understand. But so of course that was then passed to the developer. So what we've ended up with on Foxton, trying to make the right way, the green area is a bit the borough council does maintain, so the people who live there pay for that through the council tax. The blue bits are paid through the management company, and I've now found out today, I sort of guessed it, but the Housing Association charge their residents on top of that for the pink areas. So not only do you don't get double taxation where we are, John, we get quadruple taxation in Overton, which is absolutely special place. But the point is, how does this come about? We've ended up with, you know, the real estate management company are charging them £190 a year. Someone have whacked their piece on top of that, and they put a management charge on. I think they actually put a management charge to cover the cost of putting the remus charge on those. And that's what I'm saying. To be fair, the people who bought the houses, and I think we have the same situation as they have there. Not everyone seems to have signed up to this, but they're all paying it, but most are not quite sure what they've signed up to. So the whole thing's all a bit confused. But I think part of the problem is the borough probably at the time was trying to say that they're not of any great value there to the public, so we don't want the hassle of cutting them so they can have it. And but put on this is a Section 106 document. This will go to the developer to maintain, but of course the problem is they just pass it on to the residents there. But the people in the Housing Association have very little choice over what they pay on any of this. Yeah, they're just landing in there, and it's added on. And because it's done weekly, it's not that obvious. And of course, when they put it up 21% this year, it's a small percent of a relatively small charge, but it actually works out. It's another £70 a year. So the people in the smallest houses are paying the most money, which I think is just totally disgraceful. And how have we ended up with this? And we've also got the more ridiculous situation. You've actually got 3 different contractors going. You've got the Borough Council going on to cut the grass, you've got Remus going to cut the grass, and you've got the other sovereign employee to cut the grass. I mean, how ridiculous is that? I mean, and how do we get in this situation? This is our own land, and you do wonder, we need to design these sites better so these sort of things don't happen. I think that's the way around it there. And I think part of the problem is they suggest that developers don't want to pay the commuted sums. Well, there is an element of that, but in this case it was pretty much the borough saying, we're not, but this is the point, this area, we don't think it's any great public value, this piece of open space. So where do we put the public art for Foxton? Well, in the privately owned public open space. One of the reasons the charges are so high is because they have to pay for public liability insurance. Because the public are allowed to access it because it's basically publicly owned. The whole thing is farcical. Clearly there's got to be a way of recovering the costs there, but this is no way to do it, because what the real point is with the cost is that the biggest cost isn't the cut the grass for Remus, it's the cost of the administration charges. It just goes on, and then you've got several putting administration charges on top of their administration charges. I mean, this is just completely shocking. It's...
I can't interrupt you.
That's it, because that's only one part of this motion, isn't it? That's it, yes. I think we've covered that part there, but I mean, the other issue, I think the issue of transferring the land quickly, the Borough Council land has still not been transferred now, 4 years later. It is being done though, it was only because I raised it, and it just got forgotten. And it's not even clear who would, I mean, Remus, I think, were cutting the grass for that, but they're charging the residents when we should be doing it, the council. The issue of the subsidy, we gave nearly £1 million.
You've exhausted your time.
Yeah, well actually, if you look at the Constitution, I'm supposed to come along and explain the motion then, there isn't a time limit on it.
Exactly.
I'm not here as a public speaker as such, I'm here to represent the motion to you. Luckily, I read the Constitution before I came as well, so... Well, hopefully it'll save people asking me a lot of questions, won't it? So it might save us all a bit of time.
We do have some questions which I think are relevant, because I discussed this motion with the head of service earlier on this week. He's taken full account of every single point that you made within this. He recognises the scale of the work that has to be done, and that is being addressed as we speak. So please rest assured, if I can give you very confidently that assurance from the head of service. We're also sitting next to the head of the policy side. Whether that can be put in, whether it's got anything to do with it. Councillor Behrman was the first one on the list.
Yeah.
Questions to Councillor?
Sorry, Chairman. In fact, I was probably leaping ahead too fast. I wanted to speak on the topic as the seconder of the motion.
Councillor Mr. James.
Thank you. A few questions. You talked about commuted sums, that developers don't want to pay the commuted sums. Have we seen an increase in the commuted sums that we're charging? Do you know, as a borough, or why are they not wanting to?
So I did put this out at the budget meeting, that they actually put about 5.5% this year, which is way above inflation. It's certainly not going to help, is it? So, although in this case, I think these particular parts with Foxtown, it was a case that the borough said, well, we don't really want them there, so it wasn't the case. But the truth is, we don't know what discussions, and one of the things that's come out of this is, how do we don't get involved in the Section 106. I only found this by chance, by rummaging around, basically. Myself and Councillor Baker, we're not involved in the Section 106, although we were both councillors that time. We were unaware of what was going on. I only found out there was a management company managing some of it. I found this out a few years ago. What I didn't know until recently, it came out as something completely different, is that they were actually charging them money for it, because most people thought that was how it was done. The Housing Association and tenants just paid it, and that's that. So.
Just three questions. The other one is, the chair talked about that we know about the scale of this. I mean, this is Foxtown. We've heard about another one tonight in relation to Buckskin. Do we know, I mean, are you aware of the scale of this across the borough? Is this happening elsewhere? Are we aware of that?
I think it's certainly the case. I think it's been creeping in gradually. I think this is the problem. And there are some cases like the flats, so you'd expect a service charge there. But when you start putting on two-bedroom properties, blocks of houses, and that sort of thing, and it's the point. When you look at the cost of it, it's the amount that they're paying to Sovereign is £670 a year. That's more than the parish council precept for Overton. The charge to Remus is £190 a year. That's almost double what they pay to the Borough Council. We agonise over putting we're not going to put the council tax up, you know, 1% or £2 on your council tax total. But these people, and they just put them up and they increase the charges because there are no controls over them. There are controls in the housing association rents, but with absolutely no control over these service charges. Someone told me today we put up 21% this year because we looked at last year's figures and they weren't high enough. I mean, God knows what they're up to.
And my last question is, we've heard as being as part of our agenda, really, we're aware of the permitted development in relation to the government's changed the policy where you can turn office blocks into accommodation, residential accommodation. An example, if Weller, as an example, was turned into residential accommodation like I'm wishing to do, it's not going to be subject to 106. So if it had a lot of ground around it, who's going to manage that ground? Will that be the responsibility for those tenants? I mean, will they have to then pay that charge? Because obviously they're not going to be affordable tenants, they're going to be private tenants. So, and there's lots of permitted development happening in this town, flat, you know.
With flats, that's generally what tends to happen in service, they like the parking areas, right? But this is what we try to find shocking here. And also, we also had another development in Overton the same, but at the same time Overton here, well, there are none of these charges there. Masses of open. One of the problems with Folkestone is there's very little open space because we built more houses on there. It should have been 50 houses on the new phase, and it was bumped up to 75, which reduced the open space, which is ironically why they're arguing that it's not of any great value because we built houses on it. But the other over in here where there was large open space, it was on the edge of the village. Yeah, there were no charges on that, so it just seems quite bizarre. But I think there will be a problem if you start building flats or converting flats. They will have service charges, and it's just a level. But you know, I mean, in a way, I mean, initially they're not social housing, we're not putting the charges on them because the charges are uncontrolled. And for people on housing benefit, who pays that? The taxpayer. I mean, no wonder the housing benefit bill's going through the roof. I mean, Folkestone's part of it. They're paying £1,540 more. The housing association tenants and the private tenants, just in their service charges. No, but that in some cases is being recovered through housing benefit. That's me. It's just, and the irony is the people who pointed this out to me were the ones on housing benefit. They said this isn't right. The taxpayer should not be paying this money for us. You know, this should not be. This charge shouldn't exist in the first place. We shouldn't be paying more than the other people. It's just really just bizarre, the whole thing.
Councillor Keith Watts.
Yes, and the point C in your motion is about where land is transferred to BDBC for amenity purposes. What's your opinion of cases where land is transferred to the council for amenity purposes and the council then lists it as available for housing development?
Not sure I can answer that, Keno. I think we take your point, but you know, my point there was that in this particular case, it was to do we gave £1 million subsidy and put a lot of green bits on the thing, but we've not really checked did they work, how well did they work, because of course this all came out of an issue around the solar panels where they were leaking, which hopefully has now been resolved. But the point was they weren't actually working properly anyway, but no one had ever checked this, and the residents had just bought the houses, or the housing associations had been moved in there, and no one had ever looked at it. It just seems odd. You spend that amount of money, and you think we would at least go back. And at the time, we were told, myself and Paula, that we would sort of conduct a survey to see how well things worked. You know, what worked and what didn't. You know, how well these things worked. And most of it does work well, but there are problems with maintenance on there. I mean, this is the problem. Is someone put this stuff in there and saying yes, it's good. Did it work? You know, and how well? And if it didn't work, what will you do next time instead? You know, there are certainly one of the issues with the solar panels was the roofs are quite a low pitch, so they don't actually work very well. And we did point this out to the architects when they built them, and they said, "Oh, we're going to put high efficiency panels on." They said, "Well, you wouldn't need to do that if you just put the roofs up a bit. When you put the roofs up a bit, they wouldn't have leaked anyway." But it would be it was just bizarre. But we've not checked up on that. We gave them a big sum of money, £1 million. I mean, we're going back 10 years ago as well. That was a lot of even more money than it is now, learned for inflation, isn't it? So you think you at least, did the taxpayer get good value for this, and the residents to a certain extent. So.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, it's really a sort of comment rather than a question. Should I sort of...
Councillor Mitchell.
Just out of interest, Ian, what wording have you recommended, or are you recommending in the consultation in the local plan to sort out this issue? Yeah, that's an interesting one, Horsey. I think that's something that probably could go, because as we've now got the opportunity to consult on it again, that's something I think I will be putting something in there on that. There's some of the sustainability in those sides there, but it is, unfortunately, this only blew up literally on the 3rd of February. I first got the phone call to go and look at a house with a leaking roof, and it just blew up from there, and it's, to say it was snowballed. I was deluged, I think, just as they were.
Thank you, Councillor Tilbury. Councillor Bevan, you have your chance.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I continue my support of this suggestion. I just would appreciate at some stage a comment from Mr. Hunter as regards the suggestion that something be put into the local plan, which I would wholeheartedly support, but as I understood it, the only things one can address in this further consultation is the changes that are made, not what is in effect a new idea. So perhaps the officer could respond on that in due course. I'll say my piece. You're going to, sorry?
As members know, we're encouraging residents to comment only on the changes, because most of the document is as remains the same. Obviously, if there are new points that you want to raise, still make them. They'll still be valid, but we're focusing the attention on the changes.
I'm not sure whether I understood that to say it is still conceivable that it might be accepted. Is that in?
You can make whatever comment you like on a local plan, but we're trying to focus attention on the changes because we've consulted on the other part of the plan already once. So
the public document says consultation on the changes. That's what the leaflet just read sort of an hour ago, or 2 or 3 now. Anyway. Shame that Councillor Leeks has moved on, but rural residents, Leek, you're quite right. I humbly in his absence apologise. Rural residents do in some cases have double taxation. They do have the privilege, though, of that taxation being decided in both cases by elected representatives. The problem with this thing is that it's outside the democratic process. It's basically companies, I won't go as far as saying working a scam, but certainly using every advantage they have to maximise their profit, as I see it, and it's one that's unfair. And again, Councillor Leek, I should like to say, just in case you're someday watching this again, the caveat emptor is seriously harsh in terms of what we're talking about, because in some cases the agreements that have existed have been so loosely worded that these companies can do almost what they like in terms of increases. There's no particular limitation on the amount they increase things by from year to year, so it can get to horrendous levels, as indicated by Councillor Tilbury. So it is important that there be some sort of control, although, as far as I see it, it's almost a reincarnation of the old-fashioned ground rent that one previous government, I think it might even have been a Conservative one, sort of said wasn't a very good thing and people should be able to buy out of ground rents. And this is introduction of something similar where you're sort of half getting something but not really anything and being charged increasing amounts for it. And it is a creeping money spinner. And this is the thing thing that concerns me. It's been recognised by companies that they can do something in terms of earning extra income, and so they're beginning to, whatever the borough's doing, they're helping the borough to do it. And clearly we have got to be taking very keen measures to make sure that we don't allow this opportunity to progress. Flats have always been something different, and even there I feel sorry for people in flats because sometimes the constraints are not good enough. But again, most flat dwellers go in expecting something in terms of a management charge. People going into private houses don't usually do it. Don't usually expect it, and certainly people in social housing, and I can certainly say in an area in Chinham, they are being hammered for the same thing, and they are very upset because they don't have a control, and the level is getting, you were late Chairman St Joseph's present, and it is not fair on people who are in housing to have reduced rent, to find that it's creeping up quite outside the normal controls. So I'd just like to reiterate and support obviously everything that's been said by Councillor Tilbury and the rest of the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I would support the contents of what we're seeing here. There's first-hand examples of this, and we've discussed flats earlier, that's been mentioned quite a lot. And there's actually examples where even flats in the same block pay different amounts of their service charge. And I think part of the issue might be around, I don't know that it's always grass cutting either. I think it's sometimes around adoption standards and as to which bit of this tiny road you'll accept and what you won't. So you can have a corner where you're turning into a road and we will accept adoption up to this point, but thereafter we won't. And so those people that happen to have use of that then have a higher service charge and probably could be victim of exactly what you're saying, the management company putting that up however they see fit. Within a lot of it as well comes down to some of this experience that I had with some of my constituents as well, is about how much you're prepared to challenge the management company. They're not easy people to deal with. Invariably you never even get a return phone call from them, but nonetheless, there are guidelines they have to work in when they're setting their service charges, and if you're rather tenacious with them, you can at least be a thorn in their side and question how they're getting to those prices and why people are paying for what they are. But if we do allow the circumstances where, because this small amount of road is not of an adoptable standard, we are going to let our residents in for that hit in future. And it's not just about those that are renting or even private. Some of the experience I've had are those that are still in affordable housing, but they're in shared ownership, where they're told you now have the complete and utter cost of the maintenance of the building, even though they've only bought half of it. And what some of these are finding is where, for whatever reason, they haven't been able to connect to the main sewage. They have septic tanks. And one example I have again in inquiry is the septic tank just isn't big enough. And the alarm is constantly going off. And the call-out charges to that are unbelievable. Unbelievable. And it's made it so expensive, actually, that the families, although they can't afford it, they can't move away, because anyone that looks at the service charge has a panic and says, there's no way I'm buying a house here. So I just want to put it out there that it's not just grass cutting areas, it's not just about strimming, it's about roads and connections to sewers. There's a whole raft of things that needs to be considered here. So, but I do support the motion and the concept and everything we're trying to achieve.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also supportive of the motion, and I think in addition to the points that have been made, there's the sort of practical issues because in a way, fairly soon after a development has been built, the situation is fairly clear. There's a sort of fairly clear sort of definition. People perhaps understand where the boundaries are and which is the borough's responsibility, which is the responsibility of individual owners in terms of the sort of plot on which their own house or flat is built, which is the responsibility that's undertaken by the management company, and so on and so forth. But over a period of time, people lose track, and sometimes organisations lose track, and they actually forget which areas they're precisely responsible for, get confused about which areas they're responsible for and who's responsible for the other area, the upshot of that is that, you can get areas that fall into disrepair and disuse and are fly-tipped or in poorly maintained because, the organisation that's responsible has forgotten that it's responsible for it. And you also get, situations where, just the practicalities, you perhaps get some fly tipping. Someone rings up the Borough Council, says, there's some fly tipping in my road. The Borough Council says, oh, well, no, actually, that's not our responsibility because it's on private land. So, there are all these sort of common sense reasons why, what's being described here is bad, really. There's a risk to the council, which is very evident, in the comments that were presented from residents in Buckskin, where people, blame the council and say the council's behaving unreasonably, it's being unfair in the way it goes about things. And, that's yet another reason for the borough thinking about both its planning policy and also what it what it negotiates in detail with developers. And it really is important that, we grasp the issue and that where we draw boundaries, they're common sense ones, because, no one, I think, objects to, maintaining the path in their front garden, between their front gate and, where their house is. But we get into grey areas, where we have, a section of road that serves 3 or 4 different properties, perhaps at the end of a cul-de-sac, and, there's then a responsibility put, either for owners to contribute to a management company, or sometimes actually what's far worse is the situation where you perhaps have, 4 homeowners in an area, they're, jointly have a joint and several responsibility over that particular area. Perhaps 3 out of the 4 houses are bought as buy-to-let, they're tenanted, and therefore you have a situation where you have an individual resident, they know that they're partly responsible for an area, they know that the owners of the properties next to them are also responsible, but they can't actually track the owners down. They don't know what their phone number is, they don't know where they live, and the upshot is a great deal of difficulty. So, a number of additional reasons, in addition to the very valid ones already mentioned, why this issue needs to be grasped.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. The interesting element that falls out of the rural-urban bit is that it's the inequality element of all of this that really is striking. And, to be fair to John, I know he's not here, but John's been on about the rural aspect of this for years. And the grant that we're given hasn't kept pace with inflation. And he has got a justifiable case. It's separate to this issue because it is a relationship there between this council and its parishes, and that's a separate issue, but we shouldn't lose it. And I think, others are right to say there is a difference there, but it's not part of what we're talking about here specifically. The issue I've got with it is that if you take, for example, your council tax bill, now, all right, I know the police authority have shoved a good percentage on the council tax bill compared to everybody else this year. But you go down there and we're celebrating 0% increase in our council tax, 0% increase in our council tax. Well, these residents, particularly on Highfield and Buckskin, are facing a 2% increase, if you like. It's over £100,000 that company, or near £100,000 that that company is taking out of that community for services that they're not supplying, to standards that they're not meeting. That's big money to a significant number of people. And I take Councillor Peach's point that where is the justice for those that can't afford, but are nonetheless under threat of legal action if they don't pay? So what do they pay first? What actually do they go without in order to satisfy what is a management company potentially threatening them with legal action? What don't they afford in their lives? Because the sum of money isn't small that we're talking about, it's quite significant. For me, that is an issue of That's an issue really of inequality, but it's also an issue of justice. And for me, in the context of how we deal with it, I have got massive issues with how these companies go about their business. It's the regulation of them, and that isn't our job. But I guess, again, just to point out, the one thing the peer review said is that cabinet members should attend committee meetings. And I'm disappointed that the cabinet member isn't here this evening on this issue on the policy side for planning, because I'd like to say to the cabinet member, if we can capture this and we can ask him, I'd like you to respond on our behalf in relation to the national planning policy guidance on the regulation of this part of the sector and this issue, because that is where, at a national level, local authorities should be making representation to achieve some effective regulation, and it needs to be at that level. On our level, I don't think we can achieve it on the local plan. I'd love to, but I don't think a policy is here because it's case by case, and legally we're in muddy waters in terms of local plan policy. But what we do have, and this is the point, is how our officers are armed with protocol to negotiate Section 106 agreements and heads of terms, and where we as councillors support them through planning, through case by case, in applications to create the precedent that gives the officers the strength going into negotiation and so on. So there's very positive things we can do outside of having to write a policy. Now, if we can write a policy, I would be writing it tomorrow. But I've yet to be proven that we can specifically write a local plan policy to achieve the end. We might do it in SPD, and we might do it in planning guidance. And maybe that's an area to look at. I'm sure Mr. Hunter and colleagues can examine that as where it might work for us. The other issue I've got is that in terms of what the companies are doing, some of them are selling on contracts. And in selling on the contracts to other companies to pick up, they're raising the costs issue, and they're raising the issue of what the residents are then expecting to pick up. So here we have a commercial transaction taking place between two companies. The victims, if you like, of it wind up being the residents, because they pick up the cost of how that contract has then changed hands. They don't negotiate standards. They're not involved in company to company, what standard are you going to be taking on? That's not part of it. So there's a whole area here where the residents are completely cut out of it. The other area I would just like to pick up on is the new powers of permitted development. Because if we do see an increasing number, and I think we're going to see an increasing number of office blocks come forward in the town and throughout the borough for conversion outside of the planning process, then where there is open space involved in that, because there is no Section 106 obligation on any of those developers who are using the permitted development rights for conversion of office blocks, there is no 106. So where do those residents who may be moving into those future flats and future accommodations stand if there is a piece of open space, or there's, exactly as Councillor Peach describes, a bit of road that isn't adopted? Are they being left victim to this whole problem that we're highlighting? And my concern would be that they are. So is there an issue there for us to consider in how we approach dealing with permitted development applications that are coming forward? There's a whole area. We have to notify. They have the right to notify. Just go on and do it. But maybe in our negotiation with them, we need to be picking up on that. But again, from an MPPG point of view, in feeding back to government our experience, I'd like the cabinet member to do a piece of work on this and own it for us, going back to those actually at the end of the day, and it is a government issue, who can actually write the regulation in this sector. That's what I'd love to see, to be perfectly honest, because we can do around the edges ourselves. But until that's tackled, I don't think we're going to deal with the nub of the issue here, which is the regulation of these companies and their exploitation of people.
Mr. Hunt has taken that one particularly on board. He's taken notes of everything that's been observed. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I was very glad to hear that officers are actively pursuing these items with a view to doing something about stopping it from happening in the future. It'd be interesting to see what comes out of that, and what, if any, are the gaps in national policy and regulation. Because clearly it's the sort of thing Ian was describing is quite ridiculous and totally unacceptable. My concern, of course, is more to do with the poor people who finish up in this situation already. And you probably tell from my questions that my approach to this is action rather than asking somebody to do something about it, because it's intractable. I think it's a pretty intractable problem to deal with through through a borough council or somebody, particularly when there's several different operators involved. The first thing I would do in every case is to advise that people form a residents' association, and that should include all the residents of an estate, not discriminate between affordable dwellings, half shared, etc. They should try and get everybody in and treat it, however many people join and don't join, as an association of all the residents, because that means that an individual acting through the association isn't acting alone, and that's because most people are too frightened to act alone and also too worried about the possible consequences. I could recommend that to residents in my ward. Now, I couldn't recommend to residents that they stop paying the bill, because that would be prejudicial in the extreme. However, I'd say, well, what I do, if it were me, what I'd do, with or without a residents, preferably with a residents association, but what I would do is get a few neighbours together, with them take a series of photographs, or in the modern world videos, through the growing season of what is actually happening, to give myself evidence of the existing situation. And then with the same group of neighbours, who will be much younger than me, of course, and more athletic, I'd actually go out and cut the grass, I'd trim the hedges, I'd improve the thing dramatically compared with what I'd got evidence for, hasn't been done or is being done, because we had a lot of things to say, they're not doing it, and they're still charging us huge amounts of money. And then I'd say to the culprits of the piece, the management companies, or whoever they are, I say, well, sue me, try it on, take me to court. My evidence versus your evidence. My evidence is, we're doing this ourselves, you want to charge us. So either hand over your contract to the Residents Association, or take us all to court and see how you get on. And by the way, national policy is to do with localism and self-help and bottom-up activity. And that's what I'd be doing if it was me on my estate. As it happens, in my estate, the Residents Association actually take it on themselves anyway and maintain the road, because you can't get anybody to take over the road, and we pay for it ourselves. But we pay the contractor direct, and he's a chap whose parents live in the estate, so he has to do a good job for us. Otherwise he'll be out of a job in the outfit round the corner where he has his day job. So I really do think that waiting for something to happen, waiting for Sentinel or whatever housing association is, or Fred Boggs and Co, who got the contract, waiting for them to improve themselves, or asking somebody out there to take them to task and get them to do it, ain't going to fly. It'll take a long time and not work. You have to get your act together and take it on yourself and shoo them off, would be my attitude. Blocks of flats is a completely different situation. We've all lived, well, most of us have lived in blocks of flats where there is always a management charge, and the management charge usually includes the gardens and so forth around the flats. But again, the same solution is there. You all form a residents association, and if you're not happy with the management company who are doing it for you, you take them over. And I've not ever been in 3 situations I've been in, it's never failed to take over the management company.
Thank you, members. As Mr. Hunter explained right at the outset, this has been taken on by the head of service. As far as the portfolio holders are concerned, we quick look through this. It probably covers about 3 portfolios. So it's one of these things that transcends just one. This will be passed on to those 3 portfolios, but it's a guesstimate at the moment. There'll be a judgment taken, and this will be brought forward to, a good question again because I don't know the answer, scrutiny or more likely policy. This one fits more into a policy review at some stage after May.
Would members support the idea that a message to whoever we're sending this message to, if we're not clear on the portfolio holder, is that a portfolio holder should take the lead role on this, so that it is dealt with in a, what's that word? No.
Judicious?
Not inclusive. You know, isn't it terrible? Alzheimer's has set in.
More inclusive.
No.
We will, that's been taken on board. They'll talk to the portfolio holders and get a point man. Lady. Councillor James. Members, just to remind you, we've got 2 minutes. We've finished business. It's entirely up to you whether we have to suspend orders. Let's try and make it by 9:30.
I support what Horace is saying, that if it does go across portfolio holder, it would be good that there is one person that leads on it. But I like to urge the administration to take on board what the peer review said and what we committed to, that Cabinet members are meant to be at these meetings and owning these reports, and this was meant to be a new way of working, and they should have been here tonight, particularly on the buses. It's a key issue, and we should have had them here.
This is not a report. This is not a report. This is what I tried to explain to you right at the very beginning. The report will come out of this motion process. I'm sorry, that's how councils run. They run by process. I didn't dream it up. Thank you very much, members, and thanks for your patience.